Good evening. This is the Village Council Special Budget Meeting. The date is January 22nd, 2025. The time is 5:08 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilmember Mortimer.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
But she is here.
I'm here.
Okay. Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let's go right to public comment. Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment and begin with the 2025 budget process. Keith, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank the team to my left here. We have Bob Bruni, our Chief Financial Officer, Olivia Andrula, who's in our Finance Department, and Steve Sanzari. I want to thank them for the work that they have done since last summer in starting to compile our preliminary budget process for 2025. This, believe it or not, starts the summer before the calendar year for that year's budget. And we have gone through a number of reiterations of this budget already. Our process, just to be transparent about it, is Bob initially meets with each of the department directors. That occurred last fall, where they started to go through and understand exactly what the requests of each of the departments were. And then most recently, over the last 2 weeks, I've been included in those meetings, trying to really drill down on the difference between needs and wants, determine where we were at the year end in 2024, to give us a better idea of what the needs for each of the various departments would be for 2025. So tonight we're going to start that process. I will note that initially the police department was scheduled to present tonight. Unfortunately, Chief Lyons is under the weather, so he's requested to be rescheduled for another budget hearing, and we've been able to accommodate that. Tonight you will hear from the Fire Department, the Office of Emergency Management, the Public Library, the MIS Department, the Municipal Court, the Health Department, the Tax Assessor, and the Building Department. Monday, February 3rd, we'll hear from Finance, the Tax Collector. We'll discuss all of our interlocal services agreements. We'll go over capital funds, debt service, and a number of other financial areas. That night we'll also hear from engineering, planning, traffic and signal, building maintenance, water pollution control, fleet, yard waste recycling, and streets. We'll hear from the Water Department, including solid waste and recycling, which Rich Calby oversees. And we will speak to the Village Clerk's Office, Village Manager's Office, the Council budget, and the Village Attorney's budget. On Wednesday, February 19th, we will speak to the Parks and Recreation Department and also hear from the Police Department. That's the night it'll be rescheduled for. And then we'll have some miscellaneous budget discussions as well. On Thursday, February 27th, we'll have a final capital budget set to present to the council, and we'll also discuss the overall tax rate impact. I want to stress at this point that at this point, Bob and his team, along with our professional services provider from our auditing firm, are still in the process of ending 2024's books. So we have not closed out year end yet, which prevents us from being able to come up with the overall tax impact at this point in time, which is why that's scheduled for the end of February. By that time, we'll know exactly what our receivables were for last year. We'll also understand where we stand with surplus, and we'll be able to make a recommendation to the council as to how we're going to move forward. We have Monday, March 3rd reserved for an additional budget meeting if it becomes necessary. And we are, at this point, scheduled to introduce the budget on Wednesday, March 12th at our
No,
public.
it's Monday, March 10th.
I'm sorry, Monday,
I'm
March
sorry,
10th.
that's right, that's right.
That's true.
You are correct, you are correct.
Wednesday,
It is
March
the 12th, yes, correct.
Wednesday, March 12th, we're scheduled to introduce the budget, and on Wednesday, April 9th, we're scheduled to adopt the budget. So that lays out the calendar for the next few months as it goes to the 2025 budget. At this point, Bob, do you have anything you want to add? No. Okay. All right, so with that, Mayor, with your permission, we'll start with the budget presentation from Chief of the Fire Department, Chief John Judge.
Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So to start us off, we this past year had 2 retirements. Fireman and captain left. With that, we were looking to hire 2 new firemen as well. We've already hired one who starts tomorrow. And we've
Chief,
already-
could you just like really speak into the microphone, please?
Is
Thanks.
that better?
Better.
Okay. We already hired 1 new hire who starts tomorrow and promoted 1 lieutenant and 1 captain. And we're looking to hire 1 more. Looking at last year's actual spending versus this year's requests, we're at a 0.36 from our actual last year increase. We did increase our overtime this year, now moving forward after what happened last year. Last year, we originally appropriated the 250 and had some issues, as we talked about at that meeting last fall, unforeseen occurrences.
Chief, just for the public's
yes.
edification for those watching, could you just drill down on some of the personnel shortages you had in 2024?
Sure.
Why you had those? They were obviously not foreseen at the time of the adoption of last year's budget, but due to injuries, workman's comp, and military deployments?
Absolutely. Last year in 2024, we had foreseen being down 1 member due to a retirement, and also 1 military deployment. However, in 2024, on top of that, we had a 2nd military deployment. We had numerous worker comp issues, including 1 person out for over a year, as well as 3 other people. We had 4 significant personal injuries that took people out, and I'd gone through and looked, and over the course of about 6 to 7 months, we were down between 4 to 6 personnel at all times. Therefore, there was a lot of injury, both on and off the job, and the military deployment that wasn't foreseen, which caused that increase in overtime that we had was unplanned at the time.
And Chief, this was one of my questions. I think I just want to make sure. I think that just answered it. So the 2024 budget that we appropriated was like $6.5 million, and what you actually spent was $6.8. So ballpark $300,000 delta. Was that because of all the issues you just described?
That was all the unforeseen overtime, correct?
Okay.
So this year, we still are down a couple members right now due to some of the same circumstances, but we see within the first quarter of the year those members being back with us. Therefore, we did increase our overtime request to $300,000 this year from the $250, just to make up for that difference of a couple months of them still being out. And at this time, nothing else is foreseen to be needed.
And Chief, as far as your anticipated return to full staffing, what do you assess that time frame to be?
April 1st, except for the retirements that we're replacing as we speak.
And why would that not save us money if we have folks coming in presumably at less money than the folks who are retiring? Are we not seeing a savings there?
We are, just unfortunately, I think with some of the contractual obligations.
Oh, I see, because you're only coming in at, about
Right.
less, right, because you have like probably 2 or 3% raise.
The
built
current
in.
members, right, the current
So
contractual
that's the
obligations.
So you're already offsetting that, which is how you got to the 1/3 of 1% increase.
Right.
Okay.
So between the retirements and the balance of the contractual obligations gets us there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, John, since you are bringing full-time people on in April, that you're going to need the $300,000 in overtime since we're bringing extra people on?
So we are,
And
unfortunately.
extra is not the right term.
No,
Sorry.
I understand. Unfortunately, the person we're hiring who starts tomorrow starts the academy January, and by the time that person is good to go, we're talking probably August, September, hopefully August. Depending on the next hire, there's some more things in motion. We'll say that person possibly could also be ready around the same time frame as well. So we're still going to be short a couple members for at least half the year.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you.
Which, yes, of course.
And one of the things we've tried to do to the council, both in the police department and in the fire department, although you know the challenges we're facing recruiting new police officers, is to fill these positions as we know the retirement's coming, because you're going to lose those months of training. You know, they're not going to be part of the shift, either on the police side or the fire side, until they're fully trained. And then there's in-house training that goes along once they are graduated from the academy and are actually at the firehouse or in the police department. There's in-house training before they actually become an official part of the shift.
Right, and it's less expensive to bring these people on than to be paying overtime during that interim period.
Correct.
So,
Exactly.
good.
And I thank the town, I thank the village for making the promotions already this year. We had the retirement, and literally the next day, promotions were made, and that at least right there covered a lot of, there was no unnecessary overtime or anything to cover those positions. So, thank you for making those so quickly.
Good.
And how many volunteers do we have?
6 at the moment. Yes.
So, Chief, my next question, and if I'm getting ahead, tell me to stick a pin in it. So, going down to other expenses, I also see you're up about 300,000 versus what we were appropriated last year. So I get for salary because of the overtime, but how is it for other expenses?
Hold on. Yeah, I'll go through that right now for you.
Okay.
So for OE, what was appropriated in '24 was actually less than 25. If we, yeah, sorry, let me go back. Yeah, what was appropriated in '24 was actually less than 25, and our PIOSH accounts were actually up about $2,700.
I'm sorry, you're what?
Our PIOSH accounts, we have 2 accounts for PIOSH for like OSHA, which are just mandatory things we have to do, which are why they're separate below. But if we combine the difference of those 2 accounts, we're up about $1,800 for both accounts from last year.
Right.
So are you looking at the 2023 maybe column?
No, I'm looking for 2024 appropriations for other expenses, total budget, was 6.8 million. And then what you actually spent in 2024 was 7.1. So there's about 300,000 between what you were appropriated and what you actually spent.
Okay, so that is.
So that's the total budget.
Correct,
Just
that's-
to be
includes
clear.
that overtime as
The-
well.
The subtotal under operating
Oh, I'm sorry. I see what you're
is
saying.
289,755.
Never mind, never
Budget
mind.
appropriations for '24. This year he's coming in at 288,795.
I see. No, you're good. Never mind.
No worries.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so that line we're coming in less. The line below, under the PIOSH account, is just a hair higher. So as I mentioned, between the two are about $1,800 difference. I can go through a couple accounts if you want, but there's not much.
John, the
discuss.
accounts that we highlighted during our
Yes.
in-house budget meetings, I know 029 was one of them.
Yep.
Could you just highlight some of the increases?
Sure.
Even though your net is less than last year, there are increases in certain line
Absolutely.
items that I think you should highlight for the council.
029 is also, sorry, I'll let the
Contractual services.
Yep.
Yes. One big part of 029 is the EMS revenue anticipated. And as you increase that, what you expect to anticipate, we increase how much we need to pay the billing company for that. So the more money we bring in, the higher that column goes. So that's one of the big changes in that column there. That's really the main increase for 029 there. For 040, the reason that came down is we're able to.
Can
I
you
try to-
state what that is,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry.
Like 040, what that,
040 for training.
thank you.
Yes. We're able to rotate some expenses every few years. So for instance, last year we had to do EMT core refresher training, police, EMS, everybody. That's an every 3-year expense. But there's also other expenses for certain supplies, for aerial maintenance on the truck that are also every few years. So we try and just rotate those expenses through, so no one year it's a massive, massive increase. We just kind of balance out as we go through the years.
For
Yes.
the, you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. For the EMS, the billing services?
Yes, sir.
That 7% is based upon an increase in revenues that we've anticipated during the year. As a result of changing to this service, our billings are more effective, they're more accurate, and they're more timely. So I anticipate that coming into '25, I'm going to be able to utilize that additional funds to, offset these costs. So we'll be in good shape for that.
So I just want to make sure, because these are frequently asked. So you have a total of 47 in fire now with 2 incoming and 6 volunteers?
Include 6, 5, 40, 52, 54 total. If I conclude Marisol, Melanie, everybody, I think we're at 54, I believe, with the volunteers.
Okay, so 6 volunteers,
Yep.
47 full paid, and then the recommendation of 2 new.
But then he said he
No.
also wanted to hire one more beyond them.
Yes, but we also retired too, so, sorry, give me 1 second. 45, 1, 6, 2, 46, 47, 48. Yeah, 54.
54 employees.
54 total.
I have a question on the salary and wages page.
Yes, ma'am.
Over on the right-hand side, there's a column for other, and I didn't understand where that column was showing.
I might defer that to finance if you give me a
I also have a question over here, is that on our fire 2025, I'm just seeing just direct firefighters. Where are the support staff salaries? They're in there too? Okay.
If you go to the tab
Got it.
Fire,
Oh,
20
there
I
they
know
are.
you're,
Yeah, there
I know
they
you're
are.
working
Downing and
electronically. Fire
Romero.
2025, that'll give you the whole, I think it's the 4th spreadsheet tab, that'll give you the whole roster.
And Bob, my question is, on the right-hand side of this page, under 2025 increases, there's a column entitled Other, and I didn't know what that column was about. It's in between the column that says steps and the column that is the totals.
Other is the services, John, help me here.
I think that might be the change in holiday pay.
Yes,
What-
that's holiday pay. There's in their union contract, there's a provision that allows them to get so many days per year or per hours they're worked that are calculated. There's a formula to this that if you click on it, it adds the base pay, longevity, divided by 244 hours, times 8, times 14, contractual. That's where those numbers come from.
Okay.
And one more question.
No, please.
The stipend covers what? Because pretty much everybody gets a stipend.
I'm sorry, where are we at? Which stipend?
Stipend. I'm at fire EMT stipend 017.
Okay. The EMTs get an EMT stipend. Yes.
it.
Contractual, similar to
Contractual,
the
yes.
stipend for the Detective Bureau. all that.
John, what is the overall increase in your budget from the actual from last year? Because I see several different numbers here, and I'm just trying to follow it.
I think it's about 0.3%, maybe a half. Give me 1 second.
I mean, I see that for salaries and
Hold on, because down below only increased by $1,800.
the entire budget. Good. I can live with that.
So, don't have the exact number, but
Good.
I assume all the department heads will be asking for a third of 1%? Should have saved him for last, not first.
But this is a relatively large department.
City.
So 0.3% on a big department.
0.03%.
No, 0.3.
I'm sorry, you are 0.3.
0.3.
The 1 through, right.
On a large department is a big deal.
What's the total dollar amount, John? I think you just said it.
for the OE and for the bottom part,
Yeah.
for the OE and the PIOSH account, it's about $1,800.
I meant for overall, for your entire, but like how much actual money are you spending over last year?
Dan, give me 1 second and I will tell you.
I'm just looking here, I think it's 7.142 last year and 7.179, so
Yeah,
52, 62, so $35,000.
Yeah, which is great.
yeah, about 36,000, give or take.
So, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
So on the actual, it's actually 0.5% increase over what was spent last year compared to this year's budget. And on the appropriation, it's about 4.5%, 4.6. If you look at this, if you look next to the 2025 budget request, those 2 columns there, that'll bring you in line with what was budgeted last year under the original and what was spent last year.
Right.
Okay. And John, I assume you don't, in your professional opinion, no degradation of safety, no additional risk by what you're proposing?
So with the other expenses and the PIOSH, no, I believe we will cover everything we need to cover with that. I will always say, I'll always ask for more personnel. Like that is a, I could come here and ask for 9 more people, but we'd be having a different conversation. I'd be
Right.
kicked out right now anyway, so
Right.
I'm not going to do that. But yes, no, we are, with this budget, we're able to fund what we need to fund, get the equipment we need to have,
Mhm.
and take care of the business we need to take care of.
Great.
Good. Good question.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I had a question, if I can find it. The police get EMT training along with your
Correct.
personnel?
Yes.
And so if I look at 040,
Yes.
detail 040, is the fire department paying for the police getting training?
Great question. We did in 2024. Just as our budget covers like the EMS supplies for the whole village, so whether we do the public access EADs, the medical bags for the police, for special operations or OEM, it all comes out of this budget. We also this year put it into our budget to do their EMT Corps refresher training. I talked to the police chief, moving forward in 3 more years, he'll add that to his budget. We're going to move it over to him. But prior to, there was always the expectation that the emergency services, like the medical budget, would pay for that, so I added it in. But moving forward, it will be different.
Okay. And then on detail 015, where we're talking about fire prevention,
Yes.
there's a list of personnel, and I assume each of them is doing some fire prevention. It says the FMBA contract states that a fire inspector shall receive an annual stipend of $1,200 per year. But then in the request, it's $1,400.
That is a great catch, and I will change that for next year. The union contract was changed maybe a year or 2 ago. I forget when it was changed, and the number was increased to 1,400.
Oh, okay, so
Thank
it
you.
is 1,400. Gotcha.
I will mark that for next year. Great catch.
You're not getting it past her, John.
No, that was.
Just so you know that.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions on salaries and wages or operating, we can move to capital.
Let's go.
Okay. All right, focusing, actually, I'll wait. Sorry, get ready.
So with all of the capital requests, you're going to see a 6-year projection as to what the priorities are going to be. Hopefully that gives the council some perspective on what the asks will be in ensuing budget years. But Chief, you want to take us through what your immediate asks are and what your priorities are within your 2025 requests?
Of course. So I listed my requests in order of priority as well. So the first one, which says 575, is for a sinking fund to continue it for our engine replacement. Our engine is a 2003. Studies pretty much say that about 20 years in, you should be replacing. 15 years as a frontline apparatus, 5 years as a back apparatus. We have surpassed that already by a couple years. We don't have the funds to buy a new one yet. And if we did even have the funds today, we're looking at 2 to 3 years to actually obtain it. So I know we need to keep building this account. Right now, there's only 250,000 in there, and unfortunately, the way things went through COVID and other reasons, the cost of engines and apparatus have just skyrocketed.
Like how much?
So for perspective, I mean, let's say ballpark 10 years ago, the chief walked in, he'd gotten a grant for $315,000, asked for $65,000, $380. It was 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s. Right now, people just bought one town just bought one, 1.3 million for an engine, 1.1 million. It's astronomically, it's jumped. A ladder truck that we paid $900,000 for in 2012 is between about 1.8 and 2.1 right now. So it's, yeah. So I'm working with Keith and Bob right now on a 20-year apparatus projection to kind of see where we are, where we need to be. So right now, our main need is to replace our engine that's already 22 years old and would still be 3 years away if we were to order today. So we're just trying to get funding for that.
Should we order now?
Yeah, I was going to ask that too.
I'm sorry?
Does it make sense to order now? Like, can we get a
We
better
need to have the
price?
money appropriated, is my understanding.
Okay.
Fully?
Yeah.
Oh.
Need a purchase order.
Okay, it's great having these 5-year projections and all, but I get confused between the sinking funds and what we're paying each year. So if you could explain that as we go.
So the only two sinking funds that we have established at this point is under Parks and Recreation for Maple Field. The council has traditionally put $50,000 away, so when the time comes that we need to do something with Maple Field, the money will be there. Last year, we embarked on this with the fire department, knowing that we were going to have to replace apparatus at some point in the future, and we allocated $250,000 in the '24 capital budget. This year, the chief's requesting more. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have a department director level capital budget meeting. I anticipate that number will go down slightly. No disrespect, Chief. You know, those are the only two areas that we've established these sinking funds: Maple Field and fire apparatus.
So basically, you're putting that money in the bank for whatever period of time that you're appropriating the money, and you're not spending it until that time comes.
Right.
The question about the fire truck is the vendors require a purchase order, and a purchase order needs to be funded completely. So until that happens, till the money's there, they can't order the truck.
And Bob, I asked this question last year, and I don't remember what the answer was. If we're setting aside money, I assume you're an interest on those funds?
Sure,
Great.
absolutely.
Is like, what do we see on that, like roughly? Is there a way to make some money? Because ultimately, there's gonna be a lot of money in the sinking fund. That's a lot of capital, I assume we're.
So
Yeah.
we're limited in what we can invest in.
Mhm.
So basically, right now, we're in cash management plan with the state, which has a higher interest rate than you can get at the banks. But we're restricted as to where we can put these
Okay.
funds.
Just out of curiosity, what is the rate on that right now? Ballpark?
Steve? 3.8?
Oh, okay. Secondly, and Keith, I said this last year, but I love the scheduling it out for the next couple of years. This is the way I think we should go forward. Like, this to me is what right looks like. With that said, though, is there a way for us to get a view of what we put into capital for fire last year, or how much we have coming off of capital because it's been paid off? Because I know we're capped at how much we can do in capital, and so I'd like to kind of be able to see what we've done in the past, or how much money we have being freed up to compare against what the chiefs asked for this year.
So you have the column that says amount appropriated in the prior year.
Mm-hmm.
That was '24.
That was 24. If you want to go back further, I could give you the last couple of years.
So this is a pretty big difference then.
Oh, yeah.
How are
This
we
is
gonna
double
handle
what
yeah.
we
Well,
we
I'm-
started
I'm-
this last year.
We just started the sinking fund last year.
Right.
And we're in year 22 of a 20-year engine, so that's why this year and next year, we're at almost $600,000 a year, so that we can get to the 1.4 that we need to ASAP.
Yeah, but so last year we put 250,000 in the sinking fund.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're asking for 575. So it's what? It's the math.
825.
No. But I'm saying in terms of the difference. So that only accounts for $325,000 more, right, for the sinking fund, yet we're asking for $1 million more in capital. So where's the 700,000?
Oh,
Like-
below, all the items
Yeah,
below.
I see where it is,
25.
but
Yeah.
my kind is, how are we paying for that? Like, it's a huge jump over last year's capital.
No, Evan, it's going from 250 appropriation to, the request for this year is 575. And to
Right, for
Paul's-
just the sinking fund.
just for the sinking fund.
Right.
Because,
Look, scroll down, we're going from
no,
265 to
agree.
1.2.
I mean.
Okay, for
I think-
clarification, the amount you see in the amount appropriated in prior year is what council approved. The request was significantly higher, so what you're seeing for 25 and 26, those are requests. So if you want to be comparison, I can get you last year's request, and you're
Right.
going to see the same large numbers. He's going to be in the millions.
The 265 was where we landed,
Right.
and what was authorized and approved by council under capital last year. It was not what the chief came into this meeting last year with the request for. It was only what made the cut, so to speak.
I can go back and look, but that 250 could have been 575.
Right.
We cut it in half because we were had
Right, but
other-
I'm saying the sinking fund in and of itself doesn't account for all the extra spending we're asking for capital. So how do we pay for that? I mean, like, do we have money coming off of of capital that's been paid off?
So when you pay your debt service off.
That's what I'm
you're-
saying.
You're lowering your net
Right.
debt, and then that's why I use $7.5 million every year. That's
Right.
roughly what we pay down. So we're trying to maintain a smooth level.
Right, so in other words, so that means that we can put $7.5 million into capital without incurring an extra cost, because we have $7.5 million coming off every year. We put $7.5 million back on, so you've added $7.5 million. This is just $1 million right here.
I'm
No.
I think
not
we've discussed
not
tomorrow
getting to a
morning's-
million.
It's
you
going
wanna
to be reduced because
Yes.
you're going to
So
hold the
we-
capital meeting
When we
tomorrow.
meet
Okay,
down the road,
So these
you're
are
going to
not-
see a list of all the priorities that we identify as being number
okay, so
one for
this is
each
the wish
department.
list, this is not the.
Correct.
It's a wish
Okay.
list.
What's going to happen, Councilman, is you're looking at a wish list tonight.
Okay,
We have a meeting tomorrow. I call it the Hunger Games of capital
what I say.
requests with the department directors. And through administrative meetings and conversations that we have, that Bob and I have, we'll come back with a recommendation that meets Bob's $7.5 million capital request for 2025. We'll come back to you with a recommendation for that.
We're not this year at a full 7.5. It's a little less, yes?
No, right
Still.
The request you're talking about? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We're over 12 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And, I mean, John, did you like, I won't- you put the full value to it and stress the importance, yes, on the capital buy? I mean, that's why it's so much higher than last year. That would be what I would do.
I mean, last year I put in 1.2 or
Right.
3 million for that, and it got reduced down to 250 because we figured 250 is better than nothing and get us started at least. So same thing. This is just the wish list of what I'd like to see happen.
Right.
knowing
And
that.
in fairness, some of what the chief requested last year was actually ended up being covered by grants that his team was able to procure too. So, we're always looking for different ways to fund these initiatives. So some of those capital requests came off and new items came on.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, so we picked up 5 grants over the last 2 years, totaling, I don't have the number with me, it's almost $450,000 in grants,
Wow.
which significantly reduces our requests here as well for a lot of items. We'd still be asking for more gear, which we were asking for 4 years, but we were able to, with 2 different grants, wipe out that request. Thermal imaging cameras we needed, we got a $30,000 grant for 4 of them. We would have needed an extra $270,000 for air packs, but we got that grant through the AFG grant, so we were able to really knock down a lot of requests already.
that's great. That actually is great. But just to be clear, so we're maxed out at $7.5 million, and you guys start the process tomorrow morning and figure out how you can divvy up to $7.5 million.
So like I said, we have 12. We're going to
You're
get
at
it
12?
down to 7.5. And then depending on councils, if you have any plans, we have to discuss those as well, so.
Gotcha. And again, going back to my earlier question, obviously, I'm very budget focused, but especially when it comes to police and fire and public safety, we got to make sure that we're doing that as well. So let us know if that can't happen within, and then we'll have that discussion. I don't want anybody to be afraid to raise their hand and say we need more money for public safety, but on the other hand, there's only so much money, so, all right.
I know that there's some grants that are still pending, and so when we get further down, can we see where those are and how those might impact?
So we've already done a comparison. We have about $5 million in pending grant applications village-wide that are
Right.
out there currently. They've all been compared to capital requests, so you shouldn't see any capital requests that come up that would be covered by those grants.
Got it. Thank you.
And some of those grants might be offsets. So, for example, the Habernickel Playground. We have $68,000 for that. We need to bridge the gap, and I'm not 100% sure if it's a matching grant, but many are. So you will see a request for the remaining balance of that when we get to Parks and Recreation, but that's a good example of where the grant's going to pay for a portion of it, and then our capital request will pay for a portion of it.
Okay.
All right, keep going.
Go ahead, Chief.
I have one
Yes, please.
question. The engine that is in the 22nd year of a 20-year life, how's it doing?
It's back now. About a year or so ago, it was out of service for about almost a year, trying to get many things repaired. And then we were down another engine, and that was So we had no backup, couldn't do any mutual aid, any assistance in town, and it was just, we were down 2 engines at one point for a while.
How many do we have altogether?
4. 2 ride during the day, every day. So 2 primary, 2 backup, except anytime there is a additional call, a fire, a storm recall, a mutual aid call, those other backup engines are in service. So when they are not here, it is problematic.
So we have to stretch out these 2 engines another 2 or 3 years at a minimum.
Our 2003 engine will have to stretch out, 3 years for the purchase, plus however long it takes to get the remaining funding.
Oh,
And
plus,
you're-
plus
and-
another 2 years.
And you're talking 18 to 24 months on average from the day that you allocate the funding and he releases the purchase order to the time you'll have delivery of a new fire apparatus.
So we're talking probably 2029 by the time we
So
would get the engine.
we're looking at almost 5 years out that we have to make these 2 engines that have been out for a year each.
They had been out and got replaced, yes.
Do we,
And the garage is, they do the best they can. They do a great job trying
Yep.
to keep us afloat all the time, and we appreciate them for that.
do we resell the engines, or are we not allowed to?
It kind of depends on, once you get to that point, what you want to do, because depending on the year and the status, sometimes you're talking $5,000, $10,000. You know, such a minimal.
There's often a trade-in option too when we go to purchase the new apparatus. It's a
Good.
possibility as well.
Already better there. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
So the rest of the capital accounts I'll go through quickly. The tools and equipment, the 20,000, just so everybody knows, that is a standard request most years I ask for, only because we never know what's going to break, and everything in the fire service is really expensive. As I said, a thermal imaging camera, thankfully we got the grant for, but otherwise they're about $9,000 for one.
Wow.
Hose, a couple years ago, we spent almost $8,000 on one round of hose testing, all the hose that failed. So you never kind of know what's going to pop up with if an airbag goes, or a ladder. A ladder's over $2,000. So that's why that tools and equipment request is there, because there's so many things that can break on a regular basis. It just kind of has us ready to go, and it rotates every year.
What does a thermal imaging camera show?
So it looks through smoke, looks through heat. You can use this in a fire. We use it to look for people, to look for hot spots, things of that nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Number 3 is replace Car 38. Car 38 is our tour commander vehicle. It's our first vehicle on the road every single day. It's our primary response for the captain. That is the one vehicle that we try to keep rotating through every 5 to 7 years, give or take, which is why. One of our inspector vehicles is 14 years old, and it's fine. They're still doing their thing, and it's working. But when it's the tour commander primary vehicle, we don't want it to be like that. So that's why that replacement.
Is that looks like
Is there.
like a Tahoe or something like that?
Yeah.
100 grand seems a little rich for that now.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's actually a little on the low side right now. So we just got a quote for a Tahoe the other day for $58,000.
Yeah.
The lighting and sirens, you're talking $26,000 to $28,000. Graphics are about $3,000, and every mobile that we put in you're talking about $9,000 to $10,000 per mobile. And the ones we had currently have 3 mobiles. So we're actually talking maybe like $120,000, give or take.
Wow.
So ideally, that replaces Car 39. 39 goes out of service. If the radios in there are still usable, being so old, we would try and put that back in service if possible. So we try and do some cost savings here and there. And even if we were to review and look at something maybe like an Explorer, right? Let's say that you're saving maybe $5,000. I mean, it's not really even that much of a huge difference.
John, is your current vehicle, if you were to replace it, usable for another department?
So our current vehicle, 38, would become 39, which is our backup to 38. So same thing, every time we go out of town, in town for additional help, that second vehicle becomes responder. And then 39, yes, would be available for whoever would need it.
It was my question, what other features does the Car 38's replacement need in addition to the base cost? But I think your Project 4 is one of those. That's the IT stuff.
No,
They seem to
so-
be related. Am I wrong?
No, totally a different project. But just, yeah, as I said, for 38, that cost is the vehicle, the lights, the sirens, the graphics, and the radios.
Okay.
Is that whole kind of big picture.
And that's why it's 100.
While we have him here, Jay's an expert in adding equipment to vehicles, and he can tell you the cost has gone through the roof in the last couple of years.
Okay.
All right. I guess I can quickly run through the rest. I just don't want to spend too much time, being that we have the Capitol, tomorrow morning, and I'm aware I'm not getting all of this, so.
But Chief, those three are your top priorities?
Correct.
the
Those
top
are my three
Okay.
primary.
I
Exactly.
think we're good there.
I think that's good, because
Great.
we know that some things aren't going to make the cut.
Understandably so. Is there anything else for the fire department budget anybody would like to know about, or questions, or?
Anybody?
What is the benefit of project number 5, the security system that you would like to have installed?
We actually could ask that when Lieutenant comes up as well, but right now, the fire department is on its own system, we'll call it, but we don't have cameras, we're looking to do what Village Hall has. Village Hall, I believe the stable, the water department. Here, come on.
Why don't I invite Lieutenant Chuck up? We're going to transition after this discussion into our OEM budget requests. Director Kleinman is actually out of the country, so he has sent his 2 deputies, Chief Judge and Lieutenant Chuck. But Jay, you want to just speak to the security question that the Deputy Mayor had?
Yeah, absolutely. So the security system that he has, you could probably buy on Amazon 35 years ago. It's not up to par. The technologies in there are very easily defeated, and someone could break into the building if they knew the technologies to use to get into it. So we want to start bringing him over to the village, which has great potential, because now once his guys start getting access cards here, they need to get into the water department buildings, they're swiping into the water department buildings. They need to get into the stable, they're swiping into the stable. So it's just creating a network throughout the whole village. A lot of good accountability on us when the doors are opening, who's going into them. The camera systems, if there's a car accident at Ridgewood and Broad Street, these guys can look up the cameras before they even leave and kind of get a good look at what's going on. So we want to grow the network throughout the village so everyone can share information. And the nice thing about that is its maintenance costs are shared too, right? So if he builds his own network, he has to work it, pay for it, pay for subscriptions, pay for guys to come and fix it. Well, right now, all those costs are actually on the police department. So we ask the other departments to pay for the initial installs of new equipment, and then we manage it from there for them. So it kind of works out.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we can transition to Office of Emergency Management, and we'll start with the operating budget.
Perfect. So looking at the salaries and wages for OEM for this year, also pretty flat from 2024. The only thing you will notice is the actual of 12/31/24 seems low, but we realize we're still processing Q4 stipends, which haven't been added into that number yet. So that is why the actual seems quite low. But looking at the modified of last year and the request for this year is a difference of about $1,000 for total salaries and wages. Major increases in 026 is, so some changes. Maintenance of other equipment, 026 was an increase. It's looking at to service the generator, that's on property, and also, which was left out of that we realized we didn't write it in there, was the variable message board service contract, which I can let you speak about because I don't know about that.
Two things. The generator hasn't been serviced in years. It's a very large generator, and so it's going to be a little more costly to work on it this year, and then the maintenance after that's going to be significantly less. It just kind of was forgotten about a little bit. Variable message board, always remember that a lot of emergency management's equipment is not just for emergency management, it's a shared service. So the variable message board you guys have seen out a lot, it's not the orange one, that's the one that the health department got through the grant this year that the police department's running. It's the white message board that you've seen out. With that, unfortunately, the maintenance contract for the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and was forgotten, I'm sorry, the cellular data was forgotten when they purchased it. So we're just gonna have to do that every year, the $2,500. That allows us to remote into it, change the message board. So at 5 o'clock, if we're having an event downtown, we can just change the message board right away. If we want 3 different messages playing over 24 hours, we can program it. No one needs to go to the machine, unlock it, remote, play with the remote on it. It's all web-based now, which is very nice.
The next increase in 029 was under the emergency alert subscription fee. While we did an amazing job in the town with increasing our emergency contacts, that comes with a cost though also, because more subscribers, more cost. So that's all, just a small portion there to increase that.
Right.
So
So the-
029 has to do with like the reverse 911
Yes.
calls and stuff?
Correct.
So after we had the boil water
Yep.
emergency, we culled information from all the various departments and brought it over to the reverse 911 system. We knew when we did that we were going to see an increase in cost because, again, the more contacts you have, the more costly it is. But again, for the sake of emergency notifications, we felt that this was a priority, and that's why the budget's been adjusted accordingly.
Lease payment?
The other big cost you're going to see change here is there's a lease agreement here for a new pickup. Emergency management got a pickup this year. You notice that some of the trucks that emergency services have are pretty big, and we don't want those going out to training days or short deployments. It's just a waste of those extra gases and stuff like that. So we decided to get this pickup this year, and we got it through enterprise lease, which I know is...
Where are we? Where are we? What page?
That's still on 29.
29.
Yeah, you're gonna see enterprise lease payment, F-150.
Third one down below the emergency alert subscription fee.
It's 14,106.
I see it.
Okay. There's a lot of strengths about using the enterprise program. One of them is that it helps us reduce our capital costs, right? Instead of buying a $70,000 pickup, we're able to run that lease over a couple of years, and when we turn those cars back in on those leases, we always have equity into the next car. So the first original vehicle for a department is a little heavy, and then what we see is a huge return when we bring those cars back. The good thing about the Village is that a lot of our cars have very low miles. So if we keep cars 5 or 6 or 7 years, that's when things start to break down. After that 5-year mark, 6-year mark, we start getting extremely heavy costs on maintenance. We try to stay away from that on my side. I know John loves to keep things until they have 2 babies. And I get the fire trucks. I don't know how you can replace those, but the gas engine trucks, we do a lot better if we turn those over quicker and we bring those costs down. I've always explained the way this works best is if you look at the chief's vehicle for the police department. The first year we joined Enterprise, Chief Luthke was driving a Rogue. That's all we could afford. At the same cost now, the new chief is driving a Durango. It didn't cost us any extra, but the vehicle is being upgraded just by the return values that we're getting back. So Emergency Services agrees that this was definitely a project that they're interested in working on. I wish other departments were a little more interested in it. I definitely think it's worked for the police department pretty well. So that is a large increase in this budget. However, in the next couple of years, we're going to see that will decrease just naturally when we turn over the car.
And the other thing I want to say, and I think I mentioned it last year during the budget hearings, I subscribe to vehicle replacement being in the operating budget. I don't love bonding for vehicles. Obviously, for fire apparatus, ambulance rigs, that's a different conversation. But the program that Jay has established with Enterprise is heavy upfront. There's no denying that. But again, the return at the end of the lease makes up for that. and we're trying to move towards that model. We're working with various departments. You'll see when Chief Lyons comes in here that there's going to be a heavy reliance on that in the police department. And this way, we're having vehicles, newer vehicles, constantly rotated into the fleet to offset the wear and tear that happens every day, especially for the 24-hour emergency services responses.
You took the question right out of my mouth. If it's working so well for the police department, why aren't we doing it in all the other departments? But
And honestly, we're changing culture a little bit. This is something that's new. As you can see from Jeremy's budget here, there is a budget impact on the operating budget. So of course, there's a reluctance on the part of the departments to bring large increases forward. But what needs to be weighed out is the residual at the end of the lease that you're getting back and the equity that's involved there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other nice options there. For example, when Dawn comes up, she got a car, and actually the car was too big for her needs. And there was a budget on it, and this year she and I talked with Enterprise, and we're actually trading that car in right now, and she's getting a car that fits her needs at a substantial reduction of rate because the car that she traded in actually had equity. So it's almost like, I don't want to say we made money off of it, but boy, it didn't cost us much.
right.
So there's some really good benefits to that program.
Great.
Moving to 030, just to highlight one last change. Stockpile.
Yeah, so in that one, there is a large increase, and that is for our emergency stockpile for provisions for employees. You're going to see a $15,000 request for MREs and sanitary supplies. We have none.
What's MRE?
That's a meal ready to eat. That's food rations.
Oh, meal ready to.
So if we were unable to get food, let's say the apocalypse happened today, we would not be able to feed our employees one meal. This plan would be able to feed 30 employees 3 meals a day for 30 days, or 60 employees 2 meals a day at 45 days. The meal rations that we would get, the calorie intake for working hard, blue-collar workers, that's who I keep in mind when we're keeping the calories in. They would be able to work consistently and not have fatigue from lack of calories. So a big purchase. We haven't done it in about 15 years, and these meals are only usually kept for about 5.
Do we really need that? I mean, that's a pretty horrendous, I would think, I mean, there's only a couple of scenarios I would think that we're gonna have to feed people for 30 days. And to your, I mean, and the stuff goes bad, I assume, at some point?
Yep.
The only thing is, though, it's only 30 people, and because if you look at the police, the fire, special
Yeah,
operations,
but this
OEM, who would be
assumes
here?
there's no food available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I gotta think I got bigger problems if there's no food available than, you know, I mean, and again, that's a pretty, to your point, that's like an apocalyptic sort of thing.
we had a pandemic 4 years ago, and we were struggling to find sanitary stuff. And if at that time, I know it's not this council, but OEM was trying to stockpile that stuff,
Right.
and we were told no, and then we just blew through money buying stuff that we didn't need. So we buy a little bit now, and then we don't need it for a bunch of years. And if there's a snowstorm and the guys, instead of being able to cook at 3 in the morning for the DPW guys, we can hand them all field rations.
And I'm sorry, how much are you asking for this?
$15,000.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gee,
Uh,
Evan, I have a question too.
Yeah.
What's the breakout of the MREs as opposed to the supplies?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The MREs versus supplies, because the MREs, I think, are like, you know, like a terrible book from the library is coming to mind, but the supplies, I fully understand that.
You're talking about like the sanitary supplies?
Yeah, because you have them bundled together at 15,000. What's the breakout?
It's mostly MREs. It's about 13, it's a 12 and change for the MREs and a couple thousand for the sanitary supplies.
And do other equitable municipalities do this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Jay, is this required under the submitted OEM plan to the county? State police?
There is a requirement that the OEM has to be able to provide food for weather emergencies and state of emergencies.
30 days. Anyway, all right, I don't want to belabor the point. I'm a little skeptical on this one. It's not a lot of money.
On the food part of it,
Yeah.
just to be clear, not the sanitary stuff.
You know, I'll leave it to you guys.
How many people for 30 days?
It's 30 people for 30 days.
Okay.
And that's at 3 meals a day. If
Okay.
you do 2 meals a day, that is 60 people for 45 days, or, you can start moving those numbers around.
Jay, we always want to have what we need for every situation. Why don't you give us the most likely scenario of when we might need this many MREs so that we have a better handle on it?
Yeah, so the most likely scenario that does happen here every few years is a hurricane, right? This town gets literally cut into thirds during flooding conditions.
Right.
We saw Asheville this year, right? They didn't get food for 30 days. They didn't get water for 30 days. So we're just looking to make sure that we can start cutting roads open and allowing the resources to get into us.
So the severest flooding situation that I remember was, I think, 99, Floyd,
Oh, yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Tell me how much we would have used of these 3 meals a day for 30 people
So-
for 30 days.
So during Floyd, we did use our MREs. We fed people that came to the middle schools and the high school for safe resource centers. And we fed our own troops with that stuff. We probably went through, I'd probably say about a pallet worth of food, which is about 48 cases, which is probably about a third of this.
And I will just add, though, that we say 30 people, but if there's an event, there's going to be just 30 plus firefighters there. Then we got to add in 30
Yeah.
plus police, DPW. We could be feeding 100 to 120 people in a day.
And
So that number would go down to a week worth.
And,
you know.
and during Floyd, if you guys remember, we went to other places, like we went to private restaurants, brought a generator there so those guys could start cooking for us on days 2 and 3. But we ate through all this stuff in a day because we were giving food out to people who were hungry.
And then just to add, just to kind of put this all together here, we also, due to the rising costs this year, we also focused on our OEM storage space in Glen Rock that we were spending over $7,000 a year on. We were able to tighten that up, clear it out, and move it back to Ridgewood property, so we don't have that expense anymore either.
Nice.
So we did that to help offset these costs as well.
Would there be something cheaper if it weren't perishable?
There are cheaper versions of prepackaged meals.
These are pretty non-perishable.
Yeah, they
Pam.
last
These
five
are
years.
the
This is
ones
what
that are
you
going to
use-
give us the most
These
time.
are like the military things.
Yeah,
that
these are
people
ones that are
go
going to give us the
out.
most time.
Oh, okay, because here on the page, it says perishable emergency food. Okay.
I will tell you, I mean, having been through some significant flood events myself, a lot of the cost that goes to those emergency response are feeding first responders and those who are evacuated from their homes. And when you are going to a private restaurant to supply those needs, the costs rack up very quickly during those emergency situations. But in those circumstances, you have no choice because you have to feed these folks because they're out there on a 24/7 basis. So just for perspective purposes.
Yeah, and I echo what Evan said. I don't want to belabor this point in a $60 million budget, $15,000. I just wonder, have we used this volume of food since Floyd?
No. But it's been a long time since Floyd, too.
25 years.
Yeah. So we're due.
And unfortunately, the purpose of police, fire, OEM, right? We have to prepare to support everyone. That's where they turn, right? OEM is a support function for everybody in the town, for all departments.
What's your pleasure on this one, council?
Leave it, and if we need to make a change, we'll highlight it,
Got it.
and we can move forward with it.
Excellent recommendation.
And what we've done in our preliminary meetings is we have flagged areas that, depending on where we stand, going into the finalization of this budget, we have areas that we're going to revisit, and as Bob said, we'll add this to our list.
Good. Let's go.
So those changes highlight the difference in the budget total for OE. So that's the
Good.
entire OE for OEM.
Other questions, anybody?
Nope.
Capital?
Okay. Capital, this is gonna be a little easier. Obviously, the first one is our primary focus. The EOC at the police department is not, what's an EOC? An EOC is the Emergency Operations Center, I'm sorry. So whenever there is a large event, and we need to have the C-suite folks like yourselves and all the command staff in one place, and any other outsourced resources that we need to have come in, they're gonna work out of the EOC.
Yeah, I'm sorry, which tab is this one under?
Capital budget, we're just number 1. OEM, I'm sorry.
Summary, tab.
Look for Jeremy's name.
Thank you. Got it.
And if you can tell us, where is it?
Right, so right now it's the meeting room of the police station, so the conference room. The size is certainly not adequate for more than 12 or 14 people in there.
Or the
So,
equipment.
yeah. So now with the restructuring of Douglas Place and becoming emergency services and OEM, and EMS finally moving towards the fire department, we really deem that that is probably the best place for it. One, it's its own separate building. It has its own generator, it has its own sewage. There might be food there.
Out of the flood zone?
It's out of the flood zone. So there's parking. It's everything that we need to have an EOC. However, what we are missing is the equipment that goes in the EOC. The computers there, again, EMS, the volunteers there have kind of always been just bubble gumming their own equipment in there, and it's not part of Dylan's network yet. There's only about 2 computers left in there. So we really need to bring that up to 2025. There are some mandated equipment that belongs in the EOCs through the state EOC OEM groups, and that would have to just go in there. And that's just some technology stuff, which kind of brings up the costs. The building itself is not really structured to have a good EOC space. However, with a little construction, it's an actually easy fix. If you guys have ever been there, the whole front of the building before the bathrooms, and then like the garage to the left and the garage to the right and the garage to the left, you got kind of go to. That's going to be the new EOC space. A nice meeting room. It also can double as a training room for village employees or outside agencies coming in and training.
Forgive me, I missed it. Where is this?
When you go into the middle of Douglas Place, you have the garages on the right.
Yep.
And then
Got
there's
it.
some office space on the left.
Good.
That's where it's going to be focused on.
And you would do that renovation, that's not a numbered project or priority, but under building renovation, it looks like you're going to spread that out over 4 years.
Building renovations is just maintenance of that building. It's getting a little older, and it definitely needs some upgrades.
And we took a look at some old capital for OEM and realized some of that capital could be also put towards this renovation kind of project, which is why we're not asking for more than 100 grand right now.
Yeah. Yeah, as you guys talked about before, if we start looking back, there's some accounts there that we can use up for some of the maintenance projects this year.
Can you address the second piece, the upgrades to the MCI response vehicle?
Yeah, so last year, we were given by the county a older, large rescue truck. Very nice gift, but with every gift, there's always a couple problems with it. The first and foremost is that it doesn't have air conditioning, which doesn't seem like a big deal until you're driving this thing.
It's a big deal.
And it's
Yeah.
a big deal. It's a diesel engine that you're sitting on, so you can imagine how hot that gets. What the team did this year was they took all the emergency response equipment out of those 2 or 3 trailers. If you guys always saw, they were always pulling trailers around, and they put everything in there. So it's great. So if John's guys have a large fire and it's 2 degrees out like it is tonight, they'll bring that truck in, they'll set up heating tents, and they'll support the firemen as they're fighting the fire.
So Memorial Day this year, we had the trailers. We were stack crawling in trying to find things. 4th of July, this was in service. Pulled pulled right up, opened up, we set up our shelter, we set up this, it's all in one spot now. One
Yeah.
vehicle, one spot.
It's nice, clean, and organized. However, it is a 1999 diesel truck. Really low miles, thank you very much, Bergen County Hazmat. However, they certainly inherited a few problems. So this is looking just to kind of fix and upgrade the mechanic issues and a couple of other things, like it doesn't have a generator on it. And we want to take one of our older generators and hook it up to it, but just needs a little repair on that. And then hopefully, Mike and Chris's team will start doing maintenance once we get these things fixed.
So why are we want to put $25,000 into a 25-year-old truck?
Because a new one would probably be $1.5 million.
Do we think this truck is going to continue to function?
We can get a lot of years out of the truck. The engine itself is very sound. The body is very, very clean.
The body's good, it's, yeah.
It's
needs
just,
little-
just some nuances, like the air conditioning not working. We have to upgrade some electrical work to get a generator running the extra equipment in there.
LED lighting probably.
Yeah, we always like LED lighting. It's all about the lumens.
Okay.
Number 3 is being removed?
Yes.
The request? Yep.
So I just want to point out to the council, because this will have an impact on not only John's request, OEM's request, but also the police request. So we are in conversations right now with the Borough of Glen Rock with regard to a complete upgrade to our radio communication system. That means the infrastructure out on the poles. Rich Charlton, who is the expert in this field, has taken the lead in talking to 2 potential vendors that could provide these upgrades to us. As part of that comprehensive upgrade to the communication system, portable radios will need to be part of that. We have portable radios that are still on order that haven't been received on the police end from last year's capital approvals. But right now, we're going to hold back on moving forward with any portable radios until we have a full understanding of which vendor we're going to go with on the communication side and how we're going to move forward with the Borough of Glen Rock. Keep in mind, the portables will be all on us. The communication system build out itself, a portion of that will be on the Village of Ridgewood and a portion of that will be on Glen Rock. So that's why that is being withdrawn.
Where are we in the encryption discussion of communications?
That would be part of that project.
Okay,
Yeah, the encryption comes with the hardware.
okay.
So the older radios that are on our trucks now, they're going to be obsolete. However, there is always a little trade-in value. I'm not going to say we're not going to buy Maseratis with them, but it's going to help trading those in, but they're going to be obsolete when this project goes.
And just like how the vehicles transfer to other departments, so do our radios at times. So for instance, the TIEs, the teens program, they'll give them radios. The Graydon staff, we use those radios to give to them for the summer. So we do try to make use of these radios as they go down, if we can.
Called the hand-me-down program.
And the portables are the ones that go in the vehicles, and the mobile radios are the ones that go in your pocket?
Vice versa.
Oh, okay.
But you would think mobile is like, go with you.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah. But portable's on you, yeah, mobile's in the vehicle.
So portables are in your pocket?
Correct.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's how you're going to remember it.
Any other questions for John or Jay?
I mean, please.
Sorry, overall increase in the operating budget of OEM? Percentage.
It's a little big. It's about 20%, I think, from last year.
It's a little big.
But in dollar value, realizing that's about 40 grand.
That's what?
About 43,000,
Right, on the-
42,000, give or take.
And we're talking operating budget.
Yep,
Right.
everything.
Capital.
Salary,
we didn't do
wages,
anything last
OE,
year.
all that.
Yep.
Yeah, capital's up 330. So, I mean, I know, you guys are having your meetings tomorrow, but spending 100,000 on the EOC and then another 285,000 on renovations of that building over the next 3 years strikes me as maybe a touch. Well, again, I'm skeptical, but I'll leave it to you guys on the capital budget discussions kicking off tomorrow.
And some of those renovations too, just so you know, are like the heating system on the roof. Like some basic, like, things that hadn't been touched in the
that
past.
I'm like skeptical of.
Yeah.
You know, if it's heating, so you got me on that one, but.
Yeah, just so you're aware, some things hadn't been fixed over time, so we're trying to focus more on the building now.
Yeah, but that's not 100 grand though.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm with you, just as a portion of it, just so you know.
I mean, I just want to say, clearly, we always want to keep capital down, but, for the public who's watching, OEM is like a terrible thing to plan for. In the private sector, we call it business interruption. And, you see a lot of this with some terrible things, flooding, natural disasters, shootings, and it's something that instinctually, if you're looking to spend a little less, for the short term, if nothing happens, you're good. But when something does happen, after 9/11, I was on my company's business interruption plan. It is a terrible space to be because nobody ever thought about that happening. So I just, because people do watch this and do listen, it's a very important element of public safety. And, clearly with the MREs, I just want to also belabor it. When people respond to this, it's a very physical, dangerous job. And so these things are highly important to public safety in a really bad scenario. So I do think the capital's a tad too high, and I am very sensitive to that. But I also feel that sometimes OEM gets like swept away to a later day, and that later day, if we're not prepared, is a very bad day.
Yeah.
The problem with OEM is the problem with insurance generally. When you don't need it, you always have too much. When you need it, you never have enough. So we all try and strike the balance. I know you guys are working very hard to do that, and I know that'll be part of tomorrow's discussion. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I
you
think
all.
we're good. Did anybody have any other questions before we move on?
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice
much.
evening.
Very much.
All right, as we transition, I'd like to invite our library director. Lori, if you come up with your team. So as we transition into the library, I just want to remind the Village Council that the library budget is statutory. And Lori, if you would start your remarks just explaining the formula that is approved by state statute that goes to funding all of the public libraries throughout the state of New Jersey.
Lori, can you lean in a little to the mic? Yeah, yeah.
Is your mic on?
Green light.
Look down here. See if there's.
Now we're on. Okay, is that better?
Better.
Okay, sorry about that.
And Lori, you have to be awkwardly close to the
Okay.
microphone. Yeah,
You
this is
you
the
got
system
it.
that we have. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to give you just a general overview, and then I'll pass it to Rebecca Rubenstein, our treasurer. Good evening, everyone. So you may feel like you've heard this presentation before because we are, again, sitting in an enviable position with regards to our funding. As Keith mentioned, it is statutory, so there is a state minimum that the village is statutorily required to give us, and we find ourselves, again, with looking at an increase over last year. The good thing is that this funding will go directly to benefit the residents. So we have taken the excess funds, the 5% increase, and put that into materials and into building, which will directly benefit residents. Just as an aside, our circulation was right around 300,000 this year, and for the first time ever, electronic materials made up a third of our circulation. So the things that we're spending money on include books and the things you would expect the library to spend money on, but we are also servicing people who may not even come into the library but are still part of the community. So I
Right,
just wanted to,
But the statutory minimum is 5%.
over last year.
But that's the statutory minimum, and that's what we're talking about here. So
We're-
we're discussing something that we don't have any choice in.
You're
Correct.
literally
I just
asking.
wanna be
I didn't want to say that in a rude way, but
No,
No,
it's
so-
not rude.
But
I just want to
honestly-
understand where we stand.
No, it's, you're literally asking for the bare amount.
I'm
of minimum that
asking,
you are
what I'm
entitled to.
asking for is 0% over the third of a mil,
Right.
the minimum. So I'm asking for 0%.
I think I can speak for the
No
council that
additional
we-
discretionary funding.
Correct.
We unanimously support the statutory minimum.
Yeah.
And Lori, as far as your operating budget and your salaries and wages, this has all been thoroughly vetted and reviewed by the Library Board of Trustees?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And I will just say, and I'm sorry to steal your thunder, but the reason for people watching at home, the reason why we can fund you guys at the minimum amount by state law and you guys still do all the amazing things you do is because of the wonderful volunteers that contribute money to all the large projects that the library supports. And I know we said we were going to try to limit the meeting and be somewhat quick, but that's just a call out we have to make, that the wonderful Library Foundation, the Friends of the Library, like, they make all that stuff possible. And, you know, given the position we're in, we can't tell you how much we appreciate that.
Great.
So Lori, if you would, if you could just give an overview of your operating budget.
Sure, I'm
Sure.
actually going to allow Rebecca to
Perfect.
do that.
And then
She's
we'll,
our
and then
treasurer.
to the for the council, what we'll do is what is discretionary under the council's purview is what capital
Capital.
requests are being requested for this year. So let's do a highlight overview of the operating budget, and then we'll transition to capital.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
there you go. Yeah.
Hi. I'm Rebecca Rubenstein. I was just appointed to my second term as trustee of the Ridgewood Library. This is my 6th year as trustee and 3rd year as treasurer. A warm welcome to Councilmember Frank Mortimer. I thought it would be helpful to summarize how the library is funded. New Jersey municipal libraries are legally entitled to a minimum appropriation based on what's called a 1/3 mill rate, which is calculated as 33 cents on each $1,000 of equalized value of all accessible property in the village. Equalized value is the estimated market value of your home as compared to the assessed value, which is the value of your home reflected on the tax rolls. The library's minimum appropriation has increased over the past few years. This year, it is 5% higher versus 2024. The library understands that this level of funding fluctuates year over year, and an increase is not always guaranteed. The library is fortunate to be able to supplement its appropriation with money raised by its Friends and Foundation fundraising organizations, which collectively pay for all cultural and educational programming, databases, museum passes, selected technology and building improvements, and much more. In 2025, the library will see its first full year of providing passport services to the community.
Yes.
Last year, the rollout that began in June went smoothly and was much appreciated by its users. This year, it is estimated that over 1,000 passport applications will be processed, representing about $54,000 in gross revenue or $27,000 in net revenue into our budget. We are pleased to have created a material new income stream that benefits both the library and the community. The library also receives income from the Pease Library Building on the west side of town. Pease generates rental income from its 2 tenants, Northwest Bergen Central Dispatch, aka 911, and Bowler Engineering. The building has been self-sustaining despite ongoing maintenance and adherence to historical specifications. In 2025, the Pease Library will contribute approximately $78,000 of net revenue into the operating budget. The bulk of our appropriation increase will cover a 2.5% union negotiated salary increase, as well as significantly higher healthcare benefits due to a 16.3% rate increase and a premium increase due to a full-time employee now requiring a family plan who replaced an employee who had waived insurance coverage. Our technology expenses have increased due to absorbing into our operating budget a previous capital request for new computers. Building and grounds expenses have also increased as we continue to fund long-deferred repairs and maintenance. For example, we would like to update both sets of malfunctioning automatic doors and address issues with our 2 elevators. Finally, we are requesting a $271,800 capital budget to address critical facility needs. Our top priority is renovating the first floor bathrooms, which are outdated and urgently require modernization. The second priority is updating the smaller second floor bathrooms to improve functionality and accessibility. And lastly, we aim to replace the carpeting in the entire reference area, which spans most of the second floor and has significant wear. We plan to launch a fundraising campaign to support renovations on both floors, with the majority of funding anticipated to come from private contributions. We know these improvements will benefit the entire community, and your support is vital. Thank you for your consideration, and please let us know if you have any questions.
And I just wanted to note one other thing. In the years when our third of a mil has not met our operating needs, the village has always been generous in supporting our operational needs. So we appreciate that as well, because you never know when the lean times are going to show back up, so.
Yeah, I want to echo what Evan said. Just the library's awesome. I think my wife and daughter spend pretty much every day there. So, and the passport thing, like we just, I said at the council meeting last week that we just updated my daughters, and it was fantastic. And so I think that that's great. But I do have a question as to why it's showing that there's a cost involved with the, you have the patron service fees, $116,000, and it says FY passport in 2025.
We do have 2 employees that are we have costs with
Specifically
employees
for-
and mailing and things like that. So there are some administrative costs to running the passport program.
So it's salaries and postage are the expenses.
Understood. And then you were just saying about, in one fast, the insurance, that you're able to provide family insurance now, which previously you didn't. Is that what you said?
No, it's for one individual employee. We have, a variety of plans, and people can, cycle in and out of plans depending on what their family requires.
So the family plans, when an employee chooses that, they're very expensive to the library. So this particular employee had replaced a previous employee who waived their coverage, perhaps because their spouse had insurance, so that was zero cost. And now they've gone, and the new employee needs family coverage, which is much more expensive.
And as you know, that health insurance keeps going up. So
Yeah.
as I've said, these 5% increases are actually defraying serious operational costs that if we weren't in such a favorable position, we would struggle to cover. Not struggle to cover, but it would impact our budget.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I have some questions about your elevator and your roof.
Sure.
It looks like.
Okay, the roof is good. Let's not start roof.
The roof has been replaced.
Rumors. We did the roof last
Okay,
year.
the cupola.
Okay. Yes.
It sounds like it's leaking, and
I'm sorry.
you're planning to do something about it in 2029. Can it wait that long?
We actually don't need to replace we thought we were going to have to replace the cupola, but the issue was resolved with repair.
Great.
So we were very happy for once.
Anything else for the library?
Oh, capital?
Okay.
Do you want to
sorry?
talk about capital?
So the
capital.
capital request, I think they hit on it, is primarily for the carpet, right, Lori?
We have carpet and bathrooms.
Right.
So I will just say, just off the bat, that the foundation has funded a lot of interior improvements of the downstairs and are continuing to fundraise for the upstairs and will likely continue on to the auditorium. So what we are requesting are what we see as village capital improvements that, that would come anyway, whether we were renovating the library or not.
I would just note, it looks like you're asking for $271,000 this year. Next year, you're only asking for $17,000, and then you go back up. Maybe there can be a smoothing out, because I think, and I'm not sure how much you were here before, we're about $4.5 million over our capital budget we're legally allowed to spend. And, based upon, I know even Siobhan's comments just now on OEM, we got to choose between fire trucks or a new bathroom. Yeah, so obviously, again, I know I think you call it the Hunger Games, Keith, start tomorrow. But maybe there's some more thought, or to maybe trying to figure out a way to
Keep in mind too, we started to have some conversation last year, and we're going to resume those conversations with the Community Development Block Grant Program. They do fund ADA transitional handicap restrooms. So that's a discussion that we want to have with Rob Esposito down at the county and his team to talk about if that's an opportunity to offset some of these costs that the library is requesting in capital for the restroom upgrades. And then obviously the carpeting is something that's also up there.
Yeah. But the library looks great, so.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
It's going to look better. So we're calling 2025 the year of the building, so.
Come visit.
We love it.
Yes.
Other questions?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much. Thanks for coming in
Thank
tonight.
you all.
With the council's permission, I'd like to just bring up our municipal court administrator, Erica Will. Erica has her children with her tonight, so our IT director, Dylan Hanson, has graciously agreed to flip-flop positions here. But Erica will come forward and take you through the municipal court budget.
With babysitting as a line item, is that?
One
gonna
got
end?
away.
I don't see Erica's name here in the operating booklet.
I think it's just MC.
Let's go to MC.
Yeah,
MC is municipal court.
Welcome, Erica.
Hi,
Thanks for being here.
thanks for having me.
And thanks for your assistance in being here. We really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
And-
Erica, if you'll start with your salaries and wages, then run into operating expenses. Erica has no capital requests, so she's off the hook on that section.
Thank you. Okay. Our salaries and wages have gone down due to a retirement in the office. Maureen Terpstra retired. We've replaced her, but we've replaced her with a entry-level position title, so the salary for that has gone down. Supplies, is that the next one? I'm sorry.
You can go right into other expenses there.
Okay, so our supply, I'm going kind of out of order, so I apologize. My notes are out of order.
All good.
So our supplies, there's a slight increase with our supplies. That's okay. There's an increase with supplies. This year, we're going to have to purchase more toner. So at the end of last year, we noticed our toners were getting low, so I increased that line item to cover our toners. We have 3 state computers that the only thing that we're responsible for is the toner on those, and then we have 2 copiers that we use quite often, but they're small like faxes, but the toner is quite expensive for those.
Yeah.
So that's the increase for the supplies.
Okay, I hate to go to the bottom line, but you're
That's okay.
asking for less money than you were allocated last year?
Yes.
Yes,
Significantly less?
yes.
I'm good.
Upon my start, I kind of reviewed everything and what was I started last July. So I reviewed stuff, and there were some line items that we don't use anymore.
That's great.
Like maintenance, we don't have any equipment that needs maintenance contracts anymore, so I removed that line item. And there was a double office supply budget line, so we removed one of those.
Yeah.
So-
This budget's actually going to be reduced further. We have a little bit of cleanup work to do on this. For example, 076 under telephone, that $3,000 can be extracted from the budget. So, in addition to the retirements, we've seen some reduction in operating expenses on this as well.
So you're down 8% from last year so far. So far.
So far.
Anybody have any questions, or can we let this nice lady?
The only thing I
simply
would
go?
like Erica to address is the renewal of the shared services agreement for the municipal court with Glen Rock.
Yes.
So if you just want to address that before
Sure.
before you finish up.
Sure. In December, we renewed the shared service agreement between Glen Rock and Ridgewood, which also incorporates Wyckoff. Wyckoff is not mentioned in the shared service agreement because it's strictly between Glen Rock and Ridgewood. However, there are shared employees that work for all 3, including myself. There's going to be, I believe it's a 2% increase yearly, and the agreement is for 3 years, so through 2028.
I'm good.
Good?
Yeah.
Everybody? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the kids
Thank
are
you
adorable,
both.
by
Wait,
the way.
we lost one again.
No, she's hiding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, let's
I
actually
just want to
stand
say
for it.
Erica is new to our team, but she's doing a great job. She had big shoes to fill with the loss of Kim, but the municipal court is thriving, and it's in large part a testament to her efforts both here and in Glen Rock. So,
Thank you. Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Right. Hi, state your name, please.
Just so you know, Dylan, the act just before you went down 8%.
Yeah, I'm gonna
So
make up for
just-
that.
Just letting you know.
Oh, wait, it's something I do have to do. Dylan, make sure you speak directly into the mic.
Will do.
That's good.
I'll go get a lapel.
That was good.
You know, our audio visual sometimes a little tough, so
Oh, boy.
all right, Dylan. So if you'll start with your operating expenses, I'm sorry, with your salaries and wages and your operating expenses, and then we'll transition into capital.
What do you want me to do with salary and wages? That's
Just
fixed.
run through. I mean, they're all contractual increases, right? So,
Well, actually, we're not contractual, we're non-union.
right. Well, the agreed upon percentage that that we afford in the budget.
it's 15%. Like, how is it that high? Increase?
On the bottom, on the operating?
No, on salaries. Because I know we have contractual obligations, but usually it's like 3% a year.
So the situation there is that we had an employee who's no longer with the Ridgewood Water, who handled SCADA, which is their operational piece. We never backfilled that position with someone with that skill set. So Dylan and Gabriella in the MIS department have taken on those additional responsibilities. So you see a stipend in there that was added at the end of last year. However, that is going to be reimbursed to the village by Ridgewood Water. So there's a budget offset to those increases in the salaries and wages line item.
So we should be largely, well, not flat, but only slightly higher than 207, the 207,000? 3%, okay.
Which is what we factor in. So.
And I'm going to start at the end. What's your overall budget increase, dollar percent?
Dollar percent?
Dollar and percent.
From the previous year, it's probably up about 50,000.
A little more than that, closer to 60. factoring in
60,000?
the-
Yeah.
Mostly that has to do with our cloud services that increase, so SDL, which is our spatial data logic, which is a permit system for building department inspection, health department, and we started using to track online OPA requests as well last year with Eileen, and now Jennifer's taking it over.
Dylan,
Jennifer? Yeah.
Dylan, why don't we do this by line item
Oh, I'm sorry.
on operating expenses, because
that was my fault, Kate.
because the council can actually pull up the detail for each of the respective line items from 021 down to 29Z, and you can take them through what the adjustments are and what the impact is on some of the costs associated with IT.
Okay. So then do you want me to go to 029? Because that'd be the first one.
That's the big one.
That's the big one.
It was 30 grand, yep. Other contractual services?
Yeah, I'm having a technical difficulty. Hold on.
Wait, don't you work in IT?
Yeah, my mouse
I'm
is
sorry,
not.
I can't help
my
myself.
mouse is not. There we go.
Paper beats
Microsoft
digital.
is aware of the issue.
Are these all subscriptions?
So these are, mostly these are subscriptions to different software programs. So Swagit, Laserfish, which we used to archive, and we increased the licensing last year. So that was a bigger increase from what we previously spent. That's the online resolutions and ordinances people use.
Oh, they're great. It's so
We get a lot of traction on that, so it's a great program. And then we have I'm trying to think what else is a large increase here. Archive Social is supposedly going up this year. They were taken over by another company. We use that for our social media archiving to fulfill OPA requests. And then we're introducing new expenses for $8,000, $8,400 for Microsoft Office 365 licenses for the directors, so we can utilize team meetings.
Nice.
Because a lot of our vendors use Microsoft Teams, And in order for us to use that, we have to be licensed. So that was a new expense that I wasn't ready for this year. Any questions?
So I think that's the bulk of it. Okay, I don't have any questions.
So I'm going to go again for the benefit of the public. Overall percentage increase.
I believe it's a 15.4%.
Okay.
But that includes the extra salary that supposedly we're getting back from Waverly Water, right?
So-
Which I think was like 27,000. So I'm sorry, you said it was about 60,000. So you're really asking about 30,000 more.
Correct, and keep in mind too, there's an adjustment to this budget. If you look at that detail on 029, you'll see that line items 43 through 46 are the penetration testing, which we're required to do for the JIF and for the auditing firm. That's being moved from IT to finance. So you'll see that reflected when Bob does his budget presentation.
So are we saying that the 15% does not reflect the reimbursement by the water department?
Correct. Yes.
Got it. So it's actually 7, 8%, something like that.
Closer, yes.
Something. Thank you. Good. Anybody else?
No.
No.
No capital?
Move to capital.
Capital. So my first request, my number one, is a replacement of desktop and laptop computers. We've identified 45 terminals that need to be upgraded by October that have end-of-life issues with the operating system.
Wow.
So this, along with, this will cover, I would say, about 90-95% of all the computers. Some of them, the terminals, were actually just, we don't even utilize anymore. So we've gone through our entire inventory, and we have software that recognizes that. The next one is a server replacement. I went through my older capital, and I do have server firewall. Hold on one second. Access. I have money left over, about $100,000 for server equipment, and then on top of this will replace our outdated servers for our GIS file server. We're getting a server for the OEM. I took a walkthrough last year with John Judge, and we're going to be putting computers and a new server over there.
And this is actually, we'll have the physical servers here?
Yeah, we have the physical servers, but what we're doing is virtualizing them. So if one server is responsible for, say, finance department, that same program is going to be located at 2 or 3 different facilities. So if something happens to one facility, we have a full running backup.
Have we ever priced out, like, renting space on the Amazon servers?
It gets expensive for the size.
I don't know.
We looked at Edmunds Cloud Services for our finance system, and it was drastically more expensive than just to host it ourselves.
Okay.
And you say you have this 100,000 on hand?
Yeah, I have 100,000 so far, and then servers can run anywhere from about 10,000 a piece up to $68,000 a piece.
So why?
I just want to be clear on that, though. You're requesting an additional 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say
you have
that's
100,000 in reserve, and you're requesting an additional 100,000 to bridge
I'm
the
sorry,
gap.
yes.
Okay.
And that's to support all of village operations, and then water department's giving me funding to buy their servers for their offices, for SCADA and everything else.
So I see here computer replacement desktop and tough books. I recall we just signed an ordinance, I think, giving you $100,000 for new computers, like relatively recently.
I didn't do any capital last year.
Yeah, so that's one of my questions. Is it was in the last month or two. There was an ordinance we passed. It was like 100.
Oh no, that was for network switches.
Is the networks? You sure?
Network switches, yeah, because I got a deal through our provider on the manufacturer that we use for switches, and they were running a promo, so I bought switches through them.
For 100,000.
100,000.
Okay.
And the switches are for the communications to all the facilities over the fiber network, and we've been expanding the fiber with Signal drastically throughout the village and to other locations.
Anybody else?
IT vehicle.
IT vehicle, I was requesting an EV vehicle that we could use because we go site to site, as well as now we're going to all the pump houses, and I was going to see if it could be shared as an expense with the water department. We do try to use other departments' vehicles, but if we borrow, like, say, a truck from engineering, we're putting brand new server equipment on top of shovels, pickaxes, so that's fun. If we use another departments, there's usually tents and tables and boxes, and they use it for storage. So there's not really any clean vehicles to go site to site. And when we don't have an available vehicle, we do use our own personal vehicles. And then I did get from Jay a lease from Enterprise on the same vehicle, and it's about $700 a month through operating.
I'm a little skeptical on that one, Dylan.
Yeah.
And when it comes to considering a vehicle, I'd ask that you consider hybrid or electric.
Well, years ago, we had a Mini Cooper EV, and it was great for just going around town. We were able to put stuff in the back of it and go to all the different sites. It was easy to park, easy to get around. And then we just plugged it into the light pole on the police parking lot. It worked great.
Even if it's $700 a month, you said, through the lease,
It's our be their first lease on an EV vehicle, and they have a drastic depreciation.
okay. Yeah,
And that was low mileage.
I remain skeptical. I don't know how often
Yeah.
you're really going to need that vehicle.
Well, even if like you're reimbursed for miles and all that stuff. you know.
But if we put a reimbursement, it's like a mile and a half a day, because we can be from here to stable. But if it's a nice day, like, we'll walk over to the stable, we'll walk over to Graydon Pool,
Yeah.
we'll walk up to the streets facility. But if we're going to the different sites for the pump houses, that's in Wyckoff, Midland Park, Ridgewood, it's all around, all the pump houses.
I'm going to gather that this IT vehicle is on that list of things to review very carefully.
Tomorrow morning.
Microphone?
This is a new concept. We haven't had to deal with this before. So Dylan's making the request as the IT director. I haven't heard anything from Water to promote this, so.
Do we always do it this way though? Because even the SCADA data logic is going in and then reverse charge. Do we ever go charge, reverse us?
Well, it's actually easier from an accounting standpoint to put it in the current fund and then bill it out and reimburse it, as opposed to the water. Water's a little bit more of a challenge to.
And then when we do that, do they bill the other water jobs the same way? Like Glenrock, or do we not know?
I don't believe that happens in
Well,
that
what would they
situation.
bill? Because their revenue is based on customer billing. They're not burdening the municipalities. They have no interaction with the municipalities. They're burdening the ratepayer. Right. So it's all their revenues. They've received no revenue from the respective municipalities. They receive the revenue from the ratepayers.
Okay.
Dylan, I have a question though, is that per some recent discussions about the acoustics in this room, is there any, I don't see a bid for that, and like,
So I have money left over. I went through that too. I have $49,575.79 in capital accounts to cover replacing one of the cameras in the back and lapel mics and upgrading to the equipment to hopefully increase the increase the sound quality. I did take a run down to the music store over by Dick's Sports Goods. I think it's Guitar Center. And I was talking to their sound engineer on lapel mics, and he recommended, use these, get these lapel mics, they'll love them. So he gave me a lot of recommendations. So I'm still trying to get in touch with the contract state-approved vendor, but they haven't called me back yet. But I was thinking about reaching out to this sound engineer and seeing if we can have a relationship with Guitar Center. Maybe they can come in and give us a quote.
okay. Because I just want to say that's been a consistent issue for years.
Yeah.
And so I really think that should be bubbled up to a need. And like you had mentioned to me about like getting the mixer and being able to cancel to make it more.
That was the one thing that the
Yeah.
sound engineer gave me a recommendation to. He gave me a couple of soundboards to consider as well.
Yeah, because I just think that it's, even like tonight, like as some people move away from the mic,
Yeah.
it's hard to hear.
Well, I also did discover we have a new employee that used to do the soundstage setups in Times Square for New Year's Eve. And he has a lot of experience with sound as well, so I'm gonna be picking his brain as well with
Yeah,
this.
I'd like
equipment.
to see, and I know this is a little bit more than the budget, but sometime, hopefully in first quarter, just a presentation to the council about what we can do to make it better.
And
hoping to have that
I just
quick.
want to be clear, you know, as Dylan has indicated, he has money from prior open capital allocations to address that issue. And I think this is a good point in the meeting where we can note that we're doing this with each of the departments. So any previously approved capital funding, we're almost doing an internal audit with each of the department directors to see what they still have to expend from that open capital because the projects are still pending, or is it reasonable to cancel that if it's no longer necessary? So that is something that we will be presenting to the council probably over the summer. Once Bob finishes meeting with each of the directors to determine what their needs are and what needs to remain and what can be canceled, we'll be coming to you with a resolution to be considered at a future meeting.
And I know we talked about, at the last council meeting, not purchasing new equipment for everybody yet, but perhaps demoing some equipment or a piece of equipment, because we don't want to get something and then it's not as good as we thought. So if there's a way to demo something or just get one before we get 10.
Oh, of course, no, definitely, we would get one piece and test it from there.
Good.
That, like the lapel mics, I actually had those, and Keith goes, "Can you get lapel mics?" And I pulled out a box, and he goes, "Where did you get these?" So I was already prepared. I was prepared for another system that we had for a portable mic that we had them, and you guys liked them, and they did sound a lot better. So I'm figuring a similar model, but a little bit better battery life and extended range.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah, but then like, last thing is that, but when we have people coming up to speak with us, we're not gonna mic them. So I think it also needs to take in consideration that, as well as public comment.
Yeah, and that would be all soundboard controlled, because then I can control the echo.
Cool.
Anybody
Thank you.
else?
Yes, with regard to the desktops that you want to buy, how many would $45,000 buy? And what, if you have an idea of how much you would make reselling the old ones as surplus, how much?
So our resell and surplus is not really feasible because we pull the hard drives out to destroy the data, because they could have, between the police departments, they could have confidential data on it. So I feel more safe to pull out the drives and destroy them, and then we recycle the equipment. I don't believe we get anything back from recycling companies on the old equipment. Most of the computers that we do get rid of are 7+ years old.
Everybody good? Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
And before we continue, I've
Take a
had
moment.
Yes, I've had a couple of requests for a 10-minute break, so we will try and keep it to 10. Okay, let's pick up where we left off.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me just do a roll call, please.
Sure.
Councilmember Mortimer?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Perrin? Here. Councilmember Whites?
Here.
Councilmember Winograd? And Mayor Vaginos?
Here.
Thank you.
So Mayor, one area that we did miss when our municipal court administrator was here was the public defender budget. So I'll just call the council's attention to that, and I'm just going to have Heather brief on some of the changes that have been made in the Office of the Public Defender.
So in the public defender, we did have our longtime public defender, I think she was probably here for 20 years or maybe around that time. She did resign, and we did replace her with the person who was the alternate public defender, who has been that for several years. In addition, he had recommended a new alternate, and Erica Will, our municipal court administrator, as well as Matthew Rogers, our village attorney, both were in favor of that person being the alternate public defender. So, and I did relay to them the concerns about having the defendant in person with the public defender, and Ms. Will is certainly aware of that. And she said for the most part they are, but there are times when it doesn't happen. If they're out of state, possibly, you know, sometimes it's a college-age student who may have the infraction, and they do not travel from where they are in college to come here. But for the most part, she does try, but she is aware of it, and she said she will try to do it as often as she can.
Good.
I just want to note there is a $1,900 increase that's requested in the public defender line item as part of the municipal court budget. That is based on caseload. We actually sat and talked to Erica about that at length during her one-on-one with Bob and I. And it is warranted based on the additional uptick in public defender needs in the municipal court for 2025.
Questions?
Keith, so we're seeing like an increase then in caseload?
For those who are utilizing the public defender, yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an overall caseload increase, but there's more of a need for the public defender to represent some folks. All right. All right, with that, I'd like to call up our health director to go over the health department budget and also our animal control budget.
Hello, Dawn.
Welcome, Dawn.
I was about to say, I'm seeing a negative sign, so even if I was hangry, I would be less hangry.
Yeah, we didn't do too bad. My staffing is pretty much the same. I always do this, forget my glasses. I am requesting for a part-time inspector. I did request that last year, but it was taken out of the budget. I had Mariani today give me this summary of how many places we have in town. We've had an increase. I think she did 17 plan reviews this year, which is a lot. But just the amount, 406 licensed establishments so in town, and that counts everything. It counts 95 restaurants. We've got 36 food establishments. Believe it or not, we have, again, I did that with my glasses, 53 cosmetology places. So we've been licensed.
53 what?
Cosmetology.
Does that include barbers?
Yeah, barber, nail salons, yeah. So I think when we wrote the ordinance, I don't even know, maybe 6 years ago, there were like 24, I think. So, yeah, so we've been pretty busy with those.
Just goes to show you that in the Amazon economy, it's all service providing.
Yeah,
Storefronts.
amazing. Yeah, I can't believe how many there are. I was like, are you sure? And I was like, give me the numbers. So, yeah, and we also do the cosmetology inspections for Norwood as well, and they're looking to increase. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, what I did this year. We do shared service agreements with Norwood to do their cosmetology inspections, and this year I'm charging them a $500 administration fee on top of for the hourly, which I don't know why I never thought of that before. I'm also doing that with the shared service agreements with Glen Rock and the child health, Fair Lawn for the child health clinics, because I do all the work and then we just split it 3 ways. So I realized, wow, that makes more sense to, since we're doing all the work. We host it, we move all the equipment, I do all the contracts. So that's been working out really well. And then we also have the shared service agreement with MAWA. I've been there for almost a year, and things are coming along nicely. I almost bailed, but I didn't bail. And we have 4 years with MAWA, so this is almost year 1. So, and we make some revenue on that as well. The other thing with the budget, so the part-time inspector, we're looking for just 5 hours a week. It's about $9,000. I had somebody at the end of the year help us to keep up with the inspections, and I'm looking to bring her back on. She actually used to work for me years ago, and she's now working part-time. She's teaching ice skating, and she wants to do some part-time inspections, so kind of worked out well. And then also geese control. I put that on the budget this year, especially in light of the bird flu and that we're seeing now with Canada geese. I don't know if you guys remember, in 2019, we did a whole big Geese Peace campaign where we had the guy come in and we were training everybody, and I had the county here. And that year we oiled a ton of eggs, and then COVID happened and we kind of fell off, and it's really hard to get the volunteers to do it again. So we're looking at some companies that can come out and just oil the eggs. And what that will do is decrease the population. Hopefully we do it as a pilot, and then the other towns can kind of jump on that, and we'll see an increase. Because Nancy Bigos had it really successful years ago, so we're hoping to bring that back again.
It was a ton of fun. It was really fun. You had to climb all through the woods and bushes, and it was fun.
It was fun. Deanna and I used to go looking for the nests and then pointing them out, but I never actually oiled, so. It's interesting.
Dawn, if I could just interrupt you for a moment. So I just want to go back to the to 011, which is the full-time salaries and wages.
Yes.
If you go, and this is more for the council, if you go to the detail of the salaries and wages on the far right side, below the subtotal, you're going to see a grant funding per file. That's $136,621 that Dawn has brought in through grant funding to offset the salaries of her staff. So actually that total number for salaries is actually $531,735 less the grant, and then the budget offset due to the shared services agreement with MAWA, which is $32,640, and that gets us to the number that's going to be budgeted for, which is the $362,474.
Very nice.
So I just want to point out that there's grant offsets, there's shared services revenue that serves as an offset when it comes to the salaries and wages for this.
So Dawn, this is outstanding.
Thank you.
Any concerns that you're not getting what you need? I mean, do we feel confident that this will cover, any of the risk, any things that you control for?
The 5 hours of the inspector?
Just in general, holistically across all your remit. Are you comfortable with this budget being able to do everything that you need to do?
I am, yeah.
For the benefit of the public, what is your percentage increase in your department?
It's a decrease.
Wow.
So if you say that again, please.
Yeah, louder.
Come on, I set you up for that one. It was a high-hang curveball.
And also, I wanted to mention, I'm getting, it's not in here yet because it didn't come yet, but I'm getting a hybrid, a smaller vehicle, and it's going to be cheaper, so.
It was actually mentioned.
Jay Chuck walked us through during the OEM report.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
What is your percentage decrease?
I think, I don't know.
0.5%.
Thank you.
You just made Councilmember White's exceptionally happy.
I am truly excited.
And I just want to point out to the council too, I fully support Dawn's request for an additional part-time inspector. The amount of events that we've had implemented just in 23 and 24 on the rebound from COVID, it's impossible for Mariani to handle all those inspections 365 days a year on her own. It's not fair to her, it's not fair to her family. So, when Dawn came to me with this request for the additional inspector, that's something we fully support. As I say often, a budget is a set of priorities, and that's going to be one of the priorities that we put in for the health department this year.
And I also want to recognize that you have been getting grants for the health department for as far back as I can remember.
Mhm.
So between that and your shared services revenue, you're doing a very good service for the taxpayers.
Thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Anybody else?
Dawn, can we move to animal control?
Yeah.
And there's no capital for Dawn, right?
You have no capital.
No.
Great.
Just when I get my electric car next year or whatever. So for animal control, the only thing is, every year Tyco's contract goes up, $50 a month. And really depending on their calls, I don't know if you guys saw the PSA we put out about the raccoons. So what happened, I want to say September, I saw a huge increase in the calls for sick raccoons. So I talked to them about it, and it was distemper. So that's why we put a PSA out, just to let people know, because people think, oh, are they rabid? And it's something that dogs can get vaccines for, so we wanted people to know, and they were seeing it in the PSC&G right away. So, but yeah, so we can't really determine how many calls they're going to get that are after hours, and that month we had an increase. And then the other thing I wanted to do is canvas, and I wanted to do half a town. I keep saying half a year, but it's half a town this year of an animal canvas, which Tyco can do. It's $1 per household.
What does that mean?
They go door to door to see if you have a dog. So it used to be a requirement. I can't remember how many years they stopped requiring it. They still recommend it, but they don't require us to do it, and it was required to be done every other year. Or you could do half the town one year, half the town the next year. Just you go to the person's door, knock on the door. If you hear dogs barking or you see signs of animals or cat in the window, you would just tag the door with an application for a license.
It's a great system. You ring the doorbell, the dogs start barking, they see there's no license for this, so they send them an application.
Yeah. So it increases our revenue, which with the hospital moving, it's something that we're trying to do.
I always tell the story, and I'm going to just tell it. Seamus, they did the pet census at our beach town, and we got a scathing letter that he wasn't licensed in Bradley Beach, and I gave them our Ridgewood license, and people were up in arms. So the actual pet census is very interesting, because a lot of people don't register their dogs, and then there's when animals pass away. But, and I remember people were like, well, I was just babysitting my granddog. It got very complicated very quickly. But I think it's very worthwhile.
And a lot of our bites end up happening with dogs that aren't licensed, so. Yeah, and it's kind of good because then we can also kind of do the outreach. Last year we did a program with Kathy Santos. I missed it because I was at the Board of Health meeting in Mawa, but it was very well attended and very well liked. And I did one a couple years ago, and and it was great. It was talking about dog behavior. I learned at the time I actually didn't have dogs when I first hosted that program, and you end up learning, oh, by the way their tail is, by the way their ears are, they're in distress, so you want to keep back from them, or how to break them apart when there's a dog fight. I remember Jackie, our old police chief, she taught me how to do that too.
Keith, or I'm sorry, OE budget credits, what is that, how does that work? Or I don't know, Dawn, if you're able to tell me.
That is the dog trust.
Okay.
So the money, I'll try, you want to explain it, Bob? I can try.
Go for it.
The money that we collect from the animal licensing also goes into a dog trust, and that money is used to offset paying for the animal control program, as well as if, for instance, someone got bit by a stray animal and didn't have insurance, and we needed to help them pay for the rabies prophylaxis.
Okay. So you're up about 10 grand here. What is causing that?
So the increase in that is the canvas, the half a town canvas.
Okay.
And also the geese control, the $2,000 that I requested for the oiling of the eggs, which is in 150.
Mm-hmm.
And the canvas will likely bring in
more money.
More than that.
Yeah. I mean, when the first year I ever did one, when we had the crossing guards, which was so much fun, we caught 700 dogs that weren't, I don't know if it was dogs and cats or just dogs that were not licensed, so.
So 700 licenses at how much a license?
18 and 25.
There you go.
Yeah. Mostly 18. Yeah, it's 18 for neutered, spayed or neutered, and 25 for non.
Good.
Works for me.
You mentioned distemper. Is that the same thing as rabies?
No.
Okay.
No.
Dogs can get
Yeah, it's usually part of the general vaccines that the dogs get.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dawn. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks, Dawn.
All right, I'd like to bring up William Palumbo, our tax assessor, walk us through his budget.
This is tax A.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Bill, you want to start off with salaries and wages? I know you have some news there with regard to
Yes, there is
Renee's
a
certification.
salary increase because my assistant, Renee Buono, actually received her CTA. So she actually could become an assessor in another municipality if she wished. But we do want another assessor in town because we are such a small department that I can actually send her out on inspections and go talk to homeowners and things like that now, as opposed to when she was just a keyboarding clerk. So we technically have 2 CTAs. We have 2 assessors in a department for price of 1 assessor.
So the plan is to do a promotional track for Renee to the position of assistant assessor. So in Bill's absence, similar to in Heather's absence, the deputy clerk can act on her capacity. Renee would be able to act on Bill's capacity in his absence and also do some of the work in the office that requires a certified tax assessor to look over.
Correct. Yeah, she could actually sign the assessing books. She can do anything like that at this point. She can do everything I can. So, like I said, to have a second CTA in the department is more than a benefit.
So I hear you, that's not a huge increase, but your other expenses have doubled.
Well, no, it's an expense that we ask for every year. We always request the $75,000 for tax appeals, and that's why it goes up so much. We asked for this last year, we asked for this a year before. It's simply for defense of appeals, and especially since we have such a major one this year that we're dealing with, it's something that I've asked for several, in the last couple of years. I certainly will request it again this year.
Because we haven't granted it in the past, and you need that for what you think will be some settlements we're going to have to pay out?
Well, we have one major one that we're looking at that I think everybody knows about that I don't want to necessarily say on record.
Okay. With that 75,000, there's still another 100,000 more you're asking for this year.
There's 2 pieces to what we put in the budget. This 75,000 represents any appeal that may be adjudicated against the village, in which case we have to refund tax. So that 75,000 represents that. Later on, you're going to see in, I guess it's 029, we put money in there for the attorneys that are representing us in our tax appeals right now.
But that strikes me as the type of thing that we would budget for every year. So why all of a sudden are we budgeting it for this year if we didn't budget for it last year?
So the 75?
Both.
Well, the 75 we put in and we take out. We try
But that's
to
my point.
balance our budget.
Right, but last year, last year's last year's budget appropriation was 21,000. This year's budget request is 162,000.
Yep.
All right, if you take those numbers down to the total budget, last year modified was 172, this year's 332. So my question is, if we have to plan for legal fees and actually paying out refunds every year, why is this year different from last year?
Because we haven't had to pay it out.
Right.
We cut it out last year, too. He did ask for 75,000.
And the year before.
Yeah, and
So-
we did hack it, and we had a similar large parcel discussion.
So let me try to summarize this. It's a $125,000 increase, generally speaking, taking the salaries and wages out, right? We understand, we talked about that already. So the $60,000 is up from a $10,000 line item from last year. We obviously have a tax appeal issue that we've talked about in closed session. Actually, we'll talk about it again a week from tonight. There are going to be some legal costs that aren't captured in other areas of the budget to cover the special legal counsel that's been hired for that particular tax appeal. So that's where the additional $50,000 comes in. Again, we don't know what that's going to cost, so that number can be cut back a little bit if that's what we decide to do. But we started with $50,000 for that litigation. On the reserve for tax appeals, it is best practices across all municipalities in the state of New Jersey to have a line item under the assessor's budget for reserved for tax appeals. This way, if we have folks, how many tax appeals do we have pending right now, Bill? Give or
100
take.
in the state.
Okay, so you have 100 in state
plus
court.
appeals in the state.
If there are givebacks that the municipality settles at, we need a place to go for that money in order to restore those tax credits. So this line item, while cut in, I guess, at least the past 2 budgets, I can't speak for what occurred prior to '23. We're trying. This is a restorative addition to the budget. We're trying to restore this. Now, again, if we get to a place where we're not comfortable with what we're proposing in the budget, this may be a casualty of that. But right now, for discussion purposes, in order to fit best practices, we'd like to maintain this if possible.
And it did hurt us cutting it out 2 years ago. We had a very large one where it wasn't allowed to be credits. The state it was a similar appeal in another municipality, so it's just something that caught up with us over so many years. So the individuals who were taking the appeal would not accept just credits. They had to get money, and the state had given it to the other municipality, so we had no argument. We couldn't say, oh no, we're gonna do it this way. So we actually, without having that money in there, had to find the full, I think, $160,000 we had to give to this tax appeal.
And presumably, if we don't use it, this would go into surplus for next year, right?
Yes. And the other thing I'll point out is under one of my prior municipalities, we didn't have this safeguard in the budget, and we ended up having to bond to settle tax appeals. Not a place you necessarily want to be. You don't want to be paying interest on monies that you're liable in a tax appeal settlement.
This is another insurance policy.
Exactly. And
Maybe
listen,
you use it, maybe you don't.
And again, as I talked about the flags that we've applied to this budget, that depending on where we are and what we're going to propose to you at the end of the day, this is one of the areas that could get cut completely, could get cut in part. It's all going to depend on where we stand with what we're going to propose.
And the truth is, we're never actually spending it, as you point out. If we don't need it, it just goes into surplus.
Right,
So
exactly.
this is literally a line item that we either use it or we don't, but we never lose it.
No, it's a
not
placeholder,
spending
yeah.
money.
But worth explanation though, because you
Absolutely.
do have another $125,000 being proposed in this budget that wasn't in what was adopted last year. So definitely worth the discussion to understand what the value in this would be.
Well, and there's a duality to it. It's the 75 and then the legal fees that
Yes.
accompany it.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, we did have to hire outside counsel because the one appeal is such a particular situation that even, speaking to our counsel, said it was beyond him. So.
Yep. Good. Other questions?
Any other questions for Bill?
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Molino, come on down. Now, Tony, you're last, so keep in mind that you're the closer here, okay? All right, I was going to say, we're in the 9th inning here, so,
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Tony, welcome.
Thank you. I was told that I maintain my 1% on the smallest part of my budget. I cut a few things. The big request here is for a full-time employee, as you probably know. A very busy department, and I have 2 administrative people in there that do all the administrative work. And the phones are always ringing, and people always at our windows. If one goes on a break or takes lunch, the other one's by herself. That's why I know you've gotten complaints about not answering phones. We don't ignore phones, but if I'm talking with you at a counter, I'm not going to turn around and say, hold on, I have to answer this phone. And so with only one in the office during a period of vacations or lunch breaks, there's only one person in there. So, and for years, back in the 1990s, mid-1990s, there were 4 administrative people in the office doing all this permit processing work. Our permits are pretty much level, the same with last year, and same with the revenue. And I think we can cover it. Our revenue, I think, will very easily cover a full-time employee. Now, I have an electrical subcode official who resigned this past November, who was full-time. I talked with Keith and with Bob about making that a part-time position. We could put up to 29 hours, correct, while it's still part-time. And that will cover our inspections, our electrical, we're almost 3 weeks behind. We're only allowed to be, we're supposed to be out within 3 business days. We're up to 3 business weeks, 15 business days, basically. Electrical inspections. I'm covered, plumbing is
And I just want to point out, our part-time electrical inspector has really stepped up. He's working 2 full days a week, and this is only his part-time job.
Yeah.
So he has really done everything he can within his capacity to fill the void, but we do need to fill this electrical inspector position.
And do you have that in your proposed budget?
Yes. If you go to the detail, which is Building UCC 2025, it's the second tab after the summary. You'll see both positions that Tony's making a request for. One is both highlighted in yellow. One is in the upper area, which would be an additional administrative person, and then the part-time person, rather than a full-time person for the electrical, up to 29 hours a week.
The part-time position that we hired, the gentleman that's with us now, was for less than the 50 that's being shown. Actually, you guys, you put in 50 for both. The gentleman that left was making $50 per hour, and the one that was hired at 42, but he does plan review. So I want to keep him on. He's good. I want to keep him as the subcode official, and then hire an inspector at a lower salary, not 50. I don't think it needs to be 50. But again, we're going to be saving. There won't be the benefits won't be needed for this part-time position. So rather than me ask for, and I just thought about this because we'll cover it with a part-timer who can put up to 29 hours a week. Don't think we'll need that many, but there are periods when maybe we will. But again, we're saving those salaries.
And we're also saving a health benefit package. If we do the
Right.
electrical inspector
Right.
part-time, we won't need to provide the health benefits, which then frees up the money because the full-time person who resigned had a medical package. So that would cover the expenses for the additional administrative person.
We processed 1,836 permits this year, 2024. 2023 was 1,835, right in the same, exactly the same ballpark. We did 7,478 inspections in 2024, combined electrical, building, plumbing, fire. Every one of those permits goes through the technical assistant and myself. I signed every single one of those. They process every one of them. Comes to the counter, it gets put into the system and stamped and signed and passed around to everybody. So it's a lot of work. And the one full-timer does the zoning full-time. So when one young lady is on vacation, zoning doesn't get done, and vice versa. Well, actually, zoning doesn't get done. I help out because, I did zoning for 28 years here, so I can help out. But it's just so much hard work just for two young ladies in the office. So that's why I'm requesting this. We really need it. I bring up again the fact that sometimes the phones don't get answered right away, and it's got to go to voicemail. It's just impossible to do when there's only one person standing at the window or on a phone already. It's hard to do.
So in addition to a full-time electrical inspector, which I think we're all on board on, you're also looking for another administrative person?
I don't think we're going to need a full-time electrical inspector.
Oh, the 29-hour, right.
Yeah, I want to
Okay.
switch that over to part-time.
Okay.
And
then
then-
offset the cost of the administrator with that.
And then a full-time administrative person.
A full-time,
Got it.
It's-
And I
it's
have,
It'd still be a net reduction to the S&W.
Right.
Yeah.
And I see that your increase is flat. But here's my question for you. I completely understand that you don't necessarily have the time or ability to answer the phones. How long does it take to return the calls?
I've asked that every day voicemails be checked. You have to check every single day, and along with emails. The email's another issue where they come in all day long too.
Yeah.
Every day they have to check their voicemails.
But do
So
they
that's
return-
the, I'm sorry?
Do they return the calls every day?
Absolutely, absolutely, we have
So
to.
you're saying, so when you close shop, there are no open calls?
No, I didn't say that, but by next day.
Next day.
At the very
When you
latest,
close
sure.
shop the next day, the prior day's calls are all returned.
They have to be, yes.
I-
Including my
we all
own.
know they have to be.
Yeah.
It's just, we know that in the past, and if you're shorthanded, we want to, look, we hear a lot of stuff about the building department. It's historical.
I know.
We just, and I'm being straight here. Are all the calls being returned?
You know what? I want to say yes, absolutely. I stress that. I stress that. Now, is one missed here and there? Maybe, but we try very, very hard to answer all the phones, return phone calls and the emails, if not the same day, the very next day.
So, listen, I'm supportive of this because I appreciate that you found savings to offset the administrator. So that makes me feel very good. That to me sounds like the right way to go. But to echo what Paul's saying, like this is what we hear all the time, is issues with responsiveness. So I do think that if we're gonna bring this other person on, we need to see a real improvement in terms of responsiveness and hopefully not going to voicemail and people getting calls back even quicker. But I do appreciate you finding money elsewhere, and then again, I do support this because of that.
If there'll be one person bouncing around to do different things. That one person can stand at that window, accept applications, put them enter into the computer, answer a phone, schedule an inspection, while the other two can do those same things, but answer the phone when it rings.
Right.
When you sit at your desk, you can answer it. When you're standing at the counter, that's hard to do. That's why they have to go to voicemail. I want to say that they do check them every day. I think they return every single one every single day. I don't micromanage that part of this office, but I will.
Well, Tony, I think that's not micromanaging in my view. Like, if you're going to get another administrator to have a standing expectation of the employees that every call that's received by 3 o'clock is returned that day, that to me sounds like good customer service. Like that's not micromanaging. That's holding people accountable.
Or to tweak what Evan's saying, okay?
Yeah.
You said that it should be handled within 3 days, and you're at 3 weeks. How much, if this administrator's on, do you estimate the wait being?
Those are for inspections. That 3-week wait is for electrical inspections.
So if we're going to go from a full-time to a part-time, then those 3 weeks going to get longer.
No.
No, an additional part-time.
Well, the electrical inspector was by himself for a very long time, and he did everything. We were okay, including the plan review in the office. We were approved to hire one part-time, and that brought the weight back a little bit. The gentleman resigned. Well, he took a job with the state of New Jersey. He's doing the same thing, where New Jersey has local jurisdiction.
But what you're saying, the delay then is that you had 1.5 employees and 1 quit. So then by having 2 part-timers, that'll reduce that 3-week wait?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And if we can go up to 29 hours, still consider that person part-time. 29, I think, will be more than enough to cover, and then we'll be back to that after 24 hours notice, 36 hours, 72 hours after that, the 3 business day thing. I think we can meet. We always were able to. There were, before I retired, there were 3 part-time electrical, 3 part-time plumbing. We have 3 part-time plumbing now. We always were able to make our inspections in that required period. That's the state of New Jersey's rules about to 72 hours, always able to cover it. And I think we'll be able to again, with even just the two. They'll both be part-time. They're both part-time. One can be the plan reviewer, make inspections. The other can go out and. I talked to someone today, by the way. I wanted to talk with Keith before we got in here. I talked with someone again today, gave me a schedule where he can work, and I think it'll be enough hours to cover. It'll be enough to keep us, in line with the rules, with the DCA's rules. On
Tony, I wanted to say, so first of all, I think the work on the electrical is great. And then going back to the administrative service, so when we were shopping around, this is for the full council and for you, shopping around for platforms for the website, the village currently owns a package called SDL, Spatial Data Logic, which has a component that is fairly robust. I'm going to involve Heather in this, pretty sophisticated. And in my opinion, clearly the calls back and customer service are important, but I'd like to see more automation and awareness come out of building. We did this when we did the thing with the downtown, and here's the pre-application. But I'm convinced there's a way to use some of the existing software to streamline some of the building departments, from a million miles away. But Spatial Data Logic has an enormous building component to it. So effectively, I'm just going to talk about this for a minute. If you have the address and you look it up, you can find out if you did work, if your permits are closed, not closed. You can find out if there's a dog license, not a dog license. And not only would it help the building department, but it would take a burden off the clerks, because let's say you had, here comes Dylan, because he knows I'm talking about SDL. We already pay the license, and it's largely unexplored with the public. So you could see when you're done with the addition, or you were going to sell your house, if all the permits are sold out. So it's clearly not a discussion for the budget this way. We can have a sidebar, but if people are annoying with like phone calls and stuff like that, I get that, but there's a way to help people find out better information about the building department, because in addition to the service, you hear the process is cumbersome, it's a little hard, and I think SDL is, and Keith, I really think we should set up a meeting to discuss some of this, and Heather, I think, definitely wants to be there, and I know Dylan wants to be there, but the application that we're already paying a license fee on has, in my opinion, a very strategic way of looking at letting customers, particularly users, like electronic users, get more than they're getting now without burdening a human on the building department side. So that's it. So I just think it's have you seen it? Do you use it?
Yes.
And don't you think that publicly facing, that could help you with some of the information that you're constantly having to recapitulate back out to the public?
Yeah, we get phone calls often. I went on SDL and I see that I have open permits. I didn't know I didn't call for finals. I'm selling my house. I have to close them out.
Right.
So they find all this out, and then there's a phone call to us, or they visit us in the office.
Right.
And then we go from that point on. We schedule our inspections and all. You can go on. You can see activity. You can see where it is. If I hand it to plumbing first, it gets entered into SDL that the plumbing inspector has it, or subcode official has it. And when he's done with it, he'll enter it to say, I just put it by electrical. So you can go on and see
No, agreed.
the progress.
I think it might be worth a demo, and I don't want to belabor the budget process, but for example, what Tony just said is all the permits could be physically closed out by this electrical inspector, but system-wise they can't. And when you go to execute the house sale, or if you're caring for elder parents and selling their house from afar, you can see what's going on. I think that this is worth a look. I'm hoping Keith is going to. Okay, because I think the service part is really important, but the same old way of doing business is like kind of the same old way.
Yeah, it's. I didn't use that before I retired. When I came back here, it was in play, and I kind of like it. I like the old-fashioned way, but it didn't have all the bells and whistles like this one does.
I want to run hybrid, because some users will like that application more, and that'll burden your staff less.
One would hope.
In theory. We'll have another meeting.
Yes, no.
Yeah, I'd like to be at such a meeting, too.
Okay, I don't need to be at the meeting, too, so if people who have the service side, I mean, I've already seen it, I love it. I mean, I think you've got members of the staff all saying mostly favorable things, but we should look at that before the new person is hired, because that should be a requirement of the job to implement, utilize, and communicate to the public that the public's already paying for this. Like, one of the things as a vendor, it was very attractive that they were an existing vendor to me. And I know Dylan loves them, but I'm going to stop talking about SDL. I think there's an enormous capability to improve the service that Evan was addressing and make the public have more information to their own fingertips rather than being reliant on a customer service operation that's been some days overwhelmed. That's my only thought. And everyone's looking at me like I'm talking. Stop talking now.
We'll follow up with a meeting on that piece, no doubt.
Anybody else have any questions for Tony?
Thank you, sir.
Tony, thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks for your consideration, folks. Good luck, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
I see everybody's reorganization, so, thank you.
Thanks.
And Mayor, that concludes our departments for this evening. Again, on Monday, February 3rd, that'll be our next meeting. We'll do finance, tax collector, and all the umbrella items that fall under that. We'll spend some time with our village engineer, Director of Public Works, Chris Rudishauser, to talk about all of the divisions that fall under his lead, with Mr. Calby for Ridgewood Water and also for sanitation and recycling. And then we'll close out the night with the village clerk, the village manager, the village council, and the village attorney budget. And again, that'll be Monday, February 3rd at 5 p.m.
Great, and we will now return to public comment.
Nobody remotely?
Waiting for Dylan.
Dylan. Dylan. Nobody.
Seeing none, we will close public comment and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Meeting's ended.
Cool.
You want these back? Yes. That's fine. Wait, you mean I don't have to drag it back?
Should we put our name on it?
Just saying, I saved.
Good.
Olivia.